The Atari 2600 video game Adventure is one of the most influential games ever released. Though simple in its presentation, the game's open-ended environment was considered groundbreaking for console gaming and is credited for creating the action-adventure game genre. It served as the basis for ongoing franchises like The Legend of Zelda, Castlevania, Metroid, and so on. The styles of these games would go on to inspire countless works moving forward. Adventure's impact on the video game industry is incalculable. It was also a massive financial success, selling over 1 million cartridges. But the designer and programmer of the game was not credited because his employer, Atari, then a subsidiary of mass media conglomerate Warner Communications, did not include the names of programmers in the credits of their games. Atari feared that including identifying information would result in competitors recruiting their programmers. Erasing their employees' accomplishments made it so they couldn't make names for themselves, keeping them from accumulating bargaining power. Atari's management was reaping success from their anonymous programmers, insulting the earth behind them. Sometime after Adventure's release, a player sent a letter to Atari detailing how they unlocked a secret room accessible by bringing a single gray dot found in one area of the map to another. The room was completely empty, save for some text on the screen with the message, "Created by Warren Robinett." Warren Robinett gave himself credit when his employer wouldn't. He had designed and programmed the game over the course of a year, struggling with the 2600's technical limitation and Atari's managerial restrictions. By the time the secret room was discovered, Robinett had already quit the company. Atari's management, who were not programmers themselves, assigned their programmers to find the code. The employee who found it said if he fixed it, he would change the text to say, "Fixed by Brad Stewart." Regardless, it was deemed too expensive to create a new memory chip for the game. Steve Wright, a director of software development at Atari's consumer division, suggested that the message be retained, arguing that the hunt for such secrets would encourage their consumers to play their games more, likening it to finding an Easter egg. Adding Easter eggs, hidden secrets left by programmers in their software, became an official Atari policy. Over time, Easter egg had become a colloquial term to describe hidden jokes or details in all forms of media. A labor issue was spun into an effective promotional tool. But Atari failed to address the root of the issue, and the resistance to crediting their workers harmed them in the long term. Warren Robinett wasn't the only programmer who left the company over a lack of recognition. Four such programmers, David Crane, Larry Kaplan, Alan Miller, and Bob Whitehead, left Atari to form their own competing company, Activision. More can be said about the immense consequences of Atari's actions, but the fact of the matter is that the issue of crediting talent is not exclusive to any specific company. This is an industry-wide issue that has persisted in the 45 years since Warren Robinett designed Adventure. Frequent mass layoffs, crunch culture, low rates of pay, and sexual harassment of staff are some of the most publicized issues that plague the video game industry. And for many people who endure these conditions, they're not even given the dignity of recognition for their work and sacrifice. For decades, it has been a common practice to exclude the names of developers or, in many cases, have them use an alias. Like in Warren Robinett's case, it is a tactic that deliberately prevents workers from making a name for themselves and makes it harder for them to find work if they're fired, laid off, or if they quit. And it diminishes the contribution individuals make to a product that a brand will use to increase their wealth and expand their brand. Today, it's most common for QA testers and localizers to be left uncredited, as they are typically hired through third-party agencies. These workers often do not have direct contact with their clients, and it's usually up to the agencies to report the names of these workers to the studios. It's common for names to go unreported, even to studios who ask for them. And the non-disclosure agreements many of these workers sign makes it difficult for them to speak up for themselves. Contract workers also struggle to get their names in the credits for games. Take, for example, Rockstar Games, a subsidiary of Take-Two Interactive, who didn't credit the dozens of workers whose contracts expired during the development of Grand Theft Auto V, the most profitable entertainment product of all time. And this is because of Rockstar's policy of not crediting staff who leave during a game's production, no matter how much work they put in. Jennifer Colby, Rockstar's head of publishing, said as much when she was interviewed about the company's crunch culture in 2018. Quote, "That has been a consistent policy because we have always felt that we want the team to get to the finish line. And so, a very long time ago, we decided that if you didn't actually finish the game, then you wouldn't be in the credits." Unquote. By their own admission, Rockstar uses credits as a means of controlling their workers. Not just contract workers, but all of their staff. Examples of omitting names from credits or using credits as leverage are too numerous to list, as this is an issue systemic to the video game industry and it affects workers all around the world. It is a managerial issue, one that is created and maintained by a company's leaders, and it's difficult to incentivize leaders to improve conditions for others when they do not see those beneath them as people. These policies have been normalized by people in powerful positions for decades, and it happens everywhere. Which brings us to the subject of today's episode, the action-adventure game Metroid Dread, developed by Madrid-based company Mercury Steam and published by Nintendo in 2021. Shortly after the game's launch, former Mercury Steam employees spoke out for not having their names included in the credits of the game. Those who spoke out publicly include Roberto Mejias, who worked on the game as a 3D character and environment artist for 8 months, as well as Tania Peñaranda Hernandez, a 3D character animator who worked at Mercury Steam for 7 months. In response to their speaking out, a spokesperson for Mercury Steam said it was company policy that their employees must work for at least 25% of a game's full development time to appear in the credits, but some exceptions are made for those who made exceptional contributions. What Mercury Steam did to these employees was cruel and tragically common. So common, in fact, that another Metroid game would do something similar just over a year later. Metroid Prime Remastered, an enhanced version of Retro Studios' Metroid Prime, was released in February of 2023. Despite the faithfulness of the remaster, the developers who worked on the original GameCube version and its Wii port had their credits removed in the remaster. Ashley Rochelle, a former Retro employee who worked on the remaster, posted on Twitter that she and other employees who left before the credits were made were only given a special thanks credit. People who were let go from the company were excluded from the credits entirely. It is humiliating and demeaning to omit the names of people who contribute their time and labor to these projects, and it is deeply shameful that it is as common as it is. And although this issue has persisted for almost as long as video games have existed, I reject the idea that it should be treated as the norm, especially when considerable efforts are being made to fight this. The International Game Developers Association is a special interest group working to advance the careers and improve the lives of game developers worldwide. Among the things they do is create guidelines that assist video game companies in properly crediting staff. In March of 2023, they updated their game crediting policy guide for the first time in a decade, and provided open source toolkits for Unity and Unreal devs to make it easier for them to update a game's credits. Even prior to this update, their recommendation was that people who worked a minimum of 30 days during development should be included in the credits. A lot of bad press could have been avoided if people just followed this guide in the first place. Just saying. And another tremendous step forward happened just this year. Employees at Sega of America ratified their gaming union contract in March of 2024, with Allied Employees Guild improving Sega organizing with Communication Workers of America, or Aegis CWA. It is a tremendous achievement in the game industry to unionize at all, and this contract makes great strides in securing some amount of dignity for their workers. The contract includes yearly raises, advance notice of any planned use of AI, layoff protections that require notification ahead of job cuts, and severance for permanent employees affected by layoffs. Additionally, it also includes a commitment to credit all workers on games. While this issue is massive and significant figures are actively resisting change, there are also people working at changing things for the better. Companies prey on the skills of others and erase their contributions. They are taking money and credit from other people. It's legalized theft that's been normalized by avoiding accountability for countless years. These thieves want you to believe that the vast majority of workers are replaceable and disposable, but they depend on our labor to make them wealthy. And there are more of us than there are of them. Organizing is the path forward, for others as well as yourself. Supporting labor movements help everyone. The more successful movements there are, the easier it will be to spread this to other industries. If workplace abuse and exploitation can be normalized, these movements can be too. It is an uphill battle, but it is a necessary one. Support the cause. And when I say these movements benefit everyone, I mean everyone. Institutions that fail to preserve their foundation are doomed to crumble. There's no industry, no product, no security if the people at the bottom aren't also secure. I'm Kiefer, and this is Select and Start. Hello, and welcome to Select and Start, the podcast about meaningful and memorable video games. I'm your host, Kiefer, and every episode I bring on a guest who selects a game that made an impact on their life. I have a wonderful artist with me today, an artist that I personally love and is making their podcast debut in this episode. It's Alzandah. Alzandah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for asking, and I'm very excited to talk to you about a really wonderful and very recent video game that's exciting for me. But before we get into any of that, for the people who do not have the pleasure of knowing who you are, please tell them what do you do and what do you like.
Well, I'm a concept artist, digital artist, first off, traditional artist. I do a lot of Metroid art in the style of Yoji Shinkawa, but I also do other styles. I'm very versatile and love video games. Love working on them now.
Definitely exciting and well earned. I mean, I'm a big fan of your art. The first thing I ever saw of you was a picture of Marissa Tomei in the style of Yoji Shinkawa, but of course, your original art and the various styles that you're able to do is very, impressive and breathtaking to me. What inspired you to get into art?
um, God, no, not God. Excuse me. um, no, I got into art when I was like really young, probably 6, 5 years old, but I was just drawing like Disney stuff, and then I got introduced to anime by my grandma actually.
Whoa,
Um, she I think she assumed it was like for kids, but she got me Ghost in the Shell. She asked if it was like, "Oh, is this like Terminator?" And the guy said, "Yeah," or whatever. So
close enough.
yeah, so I watched that and I was like, "Wow, this looks cool. I'm gonna start drawing like this." And that's pretty much how I got started in art.
Right. So your big influences are, very high concept stuff like Ghost in the Shell and the art of Yoji Shinkawa, who most famously did the art for the Metal Gear series. What other influences would you say have impacted your work or like you've borrowed from throughout the years?
Probably a lot of like mecha anime, like Gundam or anything cyberpunk aesthetic. Like I guess sort of like Ghost in the Shell, and then moving forward into that, and then just creating things like on my own time. Like I create characters, and I started doing like concepts from just I don't know. Maybe if I see something, I'll be like, oh, that'd be cool on this character. Like say I don't know, like just a different way for the character to move, or like robot legs or something. Things like that. I just pick up things.
It's a very wonderful thing to like be able to materialize that in your head and then put that onto the canvas that you're working on, and that's led you to now, like you said, working on video games. So let's talk about video games a little bit. Clearly, it's had an impact on you and the way that you illustrate. Calling back again to the Yoji Shinkawa thing. No community likes to gatekeep more than the gamers. So let's check those credentials here. Let's talk a little bit about your video game history. Who or what got you into it? Possibly your grandma, your relationship with it throughout the years, and so on. Let's hear about it.
Well, my very first system actually was a Super Nintendo. One of my first games was actually a game that's celebrating its birthday today, which is Final Fantasy VI. Well, it was Final Fantasy 3 at the time, but it
Right.
was for SNES. Zelda: Link to the Past was probably the first thing that got me into gaming. Pretty much because I wanted to learn how to read and stuff. It sort of pushed me to read and learn more because I wanted to read the text that was on the screen.
Hmm.
So I think throughout the years, like Zelda has been kind of the main one, and then of course Super Metroid when I had played it, and so on. Like all the Metroid games, pretty much.
Right.
And I would say Final Fantasy does have a soft spot for me. That's that's probably the one game I'm hot and cold with, but I always go back and try it.
Yeah. That's the beauty of the Final Fantasy series is how it has so many different. It takes a lot of big swings. Not all of them hit for every single person, but there's something
Hmm.
there for everybody. Whether that is like the Gambit system or whatever it is in Final Fantasy 12, or something more traditional and straightforward like Final Fantasy 6. I have been a big fan of that as I've been getting into the series more and more, and as I'm ramping myself and psyching myself up to finally play through Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. Just a series I really admire for all of its like big risks, whether or not they personally resonate with me.
Yeah,
You said that the Super Nintendo was the console that got you into gaming. What would you say is your favorite video game console?
like of all time.
Personally, yeah,
Personally, okay. Um, God, I'd have to say GameCube.
that's a pretty common one on here, and I
Yeah.
oftentimes I don't disagree. But what's your thought process with that?
It just was out at a pretty interesting time in my life. I was getting more. Well, my first game was Luigi's Mansion and Pikmin for the GameCube, so it just had a lot of games I do like. Of course, the PS2 was out around that time, and Xbox. I think I had more games from my GameCube, like Sonic Adventure, Melee, Super Smash Brothers, like,
Yeah.
and then of course Metroid. Yeah, it just came out at a good time in my life.
Yeah, it was definitely like my siblings had a Nintendo 64, but when I moved in, when my parents got divorced, my dad got us a GameCube for one Christmas. So it's had this sort of very personal experience of like having a home console system where I could like sort of build my own taste into. In a previous episode, I referred to it as like a little brother console because it has a bunch of like pretty out there video games. Luigi's Mansion was a launch title that's very brother sibling kind of thing.
Yeah,
Do you have older brothers or siblings?
I'm the oldest.
Okay, you're the oldest. Okay, so that terminates my theory entirely. But I'm glad that you love the GameCube as much as I do.
Yeah, I was always the one who was keeping the controller and everything, and
Nice. Totally understand. So, what have you been playing lately? You talked about like the games that you loved growing up. What has Alzandah been playing most recently?
I have been playing a lot of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth,
Oh, nice.
which is really good. Haven't enjoyed a Final Fantasy game like this in a long time.
Wow, good.
And I would say Dragon's Dogma 2. I have never played the first one, so pretty new to me, but I'm enjoying that. And Bomb Rush Cyberpunk? Yeah, that one as well I'm playing.
You're speaking my language here. I mean, I love Jet Set Radio, and I've been meaning to get into Bomb Rush Cyberpunk forever. Like I said, I'm psyching myself up to play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but I realized I never played the intermission episode with Yuffie, so I'm
Oh
playing my
yeah.
way through that now, and it's only a couple hours, so I'm not too bothered by it. And I've been hearing so much praise for Dragon's Dogma 2, and I'm getting two layers of FOMO because I'm just now about to get to play Rebirth, and then this other game comes out and everybody's all over it, and I'm hearing about the mechanics and the systems and the way that the world works, and I'm like, that sounds like the coolest thing ever. I fucking love Elden Ring / Baldur's
Oh, we
Gate.
could swear.
Yeah, swearing's fine.
Oh fuck yeah. Okay.
There we go. Yeah, yeah. Let loose here. But
Okay, gotcha.
this idea that like to put it in like reductive terms, Baldur's Gate, Elden Ring bullshit being combined into one game in Dragon Dogma 2 is just very alluring to me.
Well, I'm kind of getting what you're saying because last year was a really good year for video games. Like we had game after game after game, and I felt very overloaded.
Hmm.
Of course, I was waiting for Diablo 4, and that ended up being. Uh, but we had Tears of the Kingdom, we had Baldur's Gate 3, and everything else in between. So I think it's nice that I'm because I did shut off Final Fantasy VII for a bit to try Dragon's Dogma, but I'll get back to that. Like it's really good.
Yeah, it's just like the idea of juggling two RPGs at a time sounds impossible to me. Sort of related to Bomb Rush Cyberpunk and like what you just said about 2023 video games and how like stacked that year was. I am playing through a lot of shorter video games in between the stuff I have to do for the show, and that includes games like Hi-Fi Rush, which came out last year, which
Mm,
is very rhythm heavy, and I just
yeah.
finished that, and it has been an incredible experience. It just came out on PlayStation 5 too, so other people finally get to experience this really good game.
Hmm.
As somebody who loves that visual style and really loves Jet Set Radio, that and finally getting around to Bomb Rush Cyberpunk would be really good.
Yeah, it's great.
You gave me a good long list of video games to discuss or to potentially discuss. And I thought about ways to sort of incorporate them into this initial introductory phase. People are getting to know you. This is your first podcast episode, after all.
Mhm.
What you did was give me a very thorough list because it's a very eclectic list. And you sent me so many, in fact, that I was able to create a 16 seed tournament bracket. And we are going to pit your video games that you love against each other. I'm so sorry.
Oh God.
In a new segment for the show that I'm calling Fast Bracket. March Madness may be over, but that doesn't mean we can't have a little friendly competition, again, with the things that you love and covet so dearly. Just to quickly go over the rules for this thing that I haphazardly threw together a couple hours before we recorded this episode. This will be a single elimination tournament with absolutely zero stakes. So if you say that you love one game more than the other, nobody will hurt you. These are all
Mhm.
just remember for yourself and for the listeners that these are your favorite games of all time, and just for being on the list, they are remarkable, beloved games in your heart and soul. It single elimination, so we're going to start with 16 games in the first round, 8 in the second, and then the final 4 going down to the last 2 until you decide what, besides the game that you're going to talk about, which I excluded from this list, is your favorite among your favorite games of all time.
Sounds good.
But are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. First round, Abzu versus The Sims 4.
Okay. Oh god, I really love Abzu. And it's such a weird um Abzu.
Okay, we'll advance Abzu. Since we won't be talking much about The Sims 4 anymore, what attached you to that game?
The Sims 4?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably like the fact that it heats my laptop during the winter. It's really cold. So I'm like, I'll turn on The Sims with all my mods. And yeah, so other than that, like it's just a time waster pretty much. So when I got nothing else going on, I'll turn that on.
Sure.
I love observing, and it's all I got because I don't have Tomodachi Life anymore, which is like a deep cut. That's like a 3DS game. If nobody knows about it.
I never played it, but the trailer where a bunch of Miis are running around going, "All hail the Virtual Boy" lives in my mind when I can't sleep at night. So
Yeah.
so yeah, say goodbye to The Sims 4 forever. Yeah, those are the stakes. I destroy everything from your library.
Bye, Felicia.
See ya. Mario Galaxy versus SSX.
Oh my god. Damn. Mario Galaxy.
There we go. Nintendo loyalty wins over all. This is like this was the original SSX on Tricky. Am I right?
I would like to think it's like a culmination of all three.
Okay.
Not on tour because that game's shit, but 3 especially. I really love 3.
Yeah. No, the SSX games are nostalgic, and I kind of wish that there was a way to sort of bring back the Tony Hawk style of game again.
Yeah.
All right. Matchup 3: Monster Hunter World versus Final Fantasy 15.
Monster Hunter World.
All right, there we go. Now, you've said that you love the Final Fantasy series. 15 is a game that kind of has a polarizing, reception among fans. What do you love about Final Fantasy 15?
What I love about it is making people pissed off that I love it. Probably not. No, but I was waiting for that game for 10 years back when it was Versus.
Yeah.
That's the first PlayStation, or it's the first game I've ever platinumed in my life, which is really, I don't know. I love the world of that game, the aesthetic and everything.
Mhm.
I just wish Tetsuya Nomura was still with it, because after seeing Final Fantasy Rebirth and all this, I'm like, this probably could have been a really good game.
Well, I'm glad that there's some emotional attachment there for you. Next matchup you have here: Alien Isolation or Demon Souls.
Oh my god, Demon Souls.
All right. Demon Souls Advance. I do not think that this will be the last time we'll talk about Alien Isolation because it kind of thematically ties into the game we're talking about.
Oh
But
yeah.
you an Alien fan? What makes you what appeals to you about Isolation?
Well, it's Alien. I love Alien and Aliens and that whole universe that was created. It's the first licensed game, other than I would say Chronicles of Riddick or whatever, where it felt very, like it was made with love. And I would call it like the defining, oh, you want to see what it feels like to be tasteless like by a xenomorph? This is the game. It also has that cassette era. The sound design is amazing.
Mhm.
Really elevates sound design for me is that game specifically. Yeah, I love it. I'm sad there's no sequel or anything like that.
Yeah. Amazing deep cut mentioning the Chronicles of Riddick video game, which is really good. I've
Mhm.
talked about it because there was another game I played where I make people guess, make people rank licensed video games based on their Metacritic score. And the Chronicles of Riddick game came up as like a very, very well beloved by people who played it. But it
Yeah,
is, yeah,
it's good. Go
yeah.
play it. Anybody who's listening to this.
If you can somehow find a copy, however you plan to, definitely check out that game. Next matchup here: Manhunt versus Super Mario Strikers.
Oh god. Super Mario Strikers.
There we go. It advances. I never played the Manhunt games because as a kid I was too pussy to figure out what their deal was.
Yeah, they're fucked up. Uh,
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't have been playing that. I somehow convinced my grandma to buy it for me.
You have a very cool grandmother.
Yeah, we had so much trouble getting Conker's Bad Fur Day, but this game was like, "Oh, it's already in my PS2, great."
Mhm.
I did pick Super Mario Strikers because I do love this. I do love Manhunt as well, and I
Mhm.
think, it's not really out there as much, like, because I don't even think Rockstar likes to talk about it, so definitely a game people should look up. It's really messed up,
Mhm.
but probably one of the scariest stealth action games I've ever played, to be honest.
I'll have to look into it just because I've played so many of the other, like, Rockstar games in that era, like, I'm a huge Bully fan, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just a big blind spot for me. Alright, this one is pretty messed up. Sekiro versus Armored Core.
Oh my god. Okay, that is fucked up. I'd have to go with Armored Core.
Alright, well, Advance Armored Core by Sekiro, and again, I feel terrible for Sekiro being gone in the first round, but again, this is like a 16 seed of the best video games to you ever, so,
Yeah.
yeah, I love, Sekiro.
Yeah, Sekiro is amazing.
Alright, another pretty fucked up pairing here, at least to me. Elden Ring versus Metal Gear Solid 5.
I'll have to go with Elden Ring.
There you go. Now I
Yeah.
know that you draw a lot of, the Yoji Shikawa inspired art and a lot of Metal Gear stuff specifically, so I know that this isn't the most easy thing for you, but also
Yeah.
goodbye, Metal Gear.
Best soundtrack.
Incredible soundtrack. Bloodborne versus Doom 2016.
Wow. This is gonna be surprising to, like, the people who are listening to this, because 'cause I'm pretty sure my followers are gonna dive into this. Doom.
All right, we're advancing Doom. Look, both great games, both deeply demonic games. I
Mhm.
have my preference, but this is your show here. So we are going to advance Doom, and we are going to go into round two. What a tough day to be a Miyazaki developed FromSoft game. Here we go. Round two. You ready?
Yes.
All right. We're down to 8. Abzu or Mario Galaxy, the sea or space?
Mario Galaxy.
All right. Now we didn't get to talk much about Abzu. This isn't a game I actually know very much about, even though I own it because it was like a monthly reward for the PlayStation Plus subscription. What do you love about Abzu?
I used to wanna be a marine biologist when I was young,
Same.
and I'm obsessed with, like, sharks, and there's, like, a really sad scene, if anybody's ever played it, you know what I'm talking about. I love the Journey games, and it was giving me that vibe, and it's just a mix of all the things I love. The ocean, a shark, underwater,
I'll have to check it out because I do love the aesthetic of it. I just haven't gotten a chance to
definitely.
get into it. There we go. Mario Galaxy Advances. All right. Monster Hunter World or Demon Souls?
Demon Souls.
Here we go. Now, I like Monster Hunter World. I played it for the first time because a friend of mine is a huge fan of the Monster Hunter series. And I quite enjoyed my time with it. I haven't finished it because, again, I have a lot to do in terms of video games, but really appealed to me. And while Demon Soul advances here and we'll eventually have to face off against Mario Galaxy, spoilers, what do you love about the Monster Hunter series?
I've played so much Monster Hunter, like, from PS2 to Nintendo 3DS, god, the Wii. Monster Hunter World it elevated the series in a way, like, especially the insect glaive, that's, like, one of my main weapons. I love verticality and pretty much hopping all over. It's just amazing. I love Monster Hunter.
So you were like an OG Monster Hunter fan. You were the people who were playing it before it was mainstream.
Yeah, I'm old.
No, no, no. Like it was. I remember seeing this stuff like on PSP. I didn't have a PSP myself, but like also seeing it go. Like I think Monster Hunter Try was a Wii U game, and when I was a sad Wii U owner, I was like, I'll demo it. Why not?
A
Sure.
sad Wii U owner.
I've seen it, but I finally now engaged with it, so I definitely want to see it further. I just think it's impressive for people over here in the West who check it out before it takes off. It's like being a Yakuza fan before Yakuza Zero came out.
Yeah, and the thing that got me into it was just the cover, basically, the box art. I was like, "Oh, that looks cool," and that was it. I was done.
Right on. Also crossed over with the Metal Gear series in Peace Walker. All right, Super Mario Strikers or Armored Core.
Armored Core.
All right, so what appealed to you about Super Mario Strikers to the point that you would put it on a short list like this?
Oh god. Super Mario Strikers, I know it's, like, such a weird choice, but I like the style of the game. I love
Mhm.
seeing Nintendo characters like fucking angry, especially when they're like. That's why I hate the new one because it's like, oh, they're all, I don't know, they lost the aesthetic of that. It was just such a fun game, and it was so different from all the other Mario sports titles. It's yeah, it's different than those ones.
Definitely. It's like that and Mario Hoops 3 on 3 on the DS that were just
Oh yeah,
really out there. But
definitely.
Strikers was definitely the better game of the two. I agree.
Yeah,
I enjoyed Mario Hoops 3 on 3. I've talked about it twice so far this year alone, but Strikers is the better game.
that's a Square developed one, right? With all the
Square
Final
Enix,
Fantasy characters.
yeah, it does.
Yeah, that you could fight a behemoth on there. By the way,
Yeah.
it's wild.
All right. End of round 2 here with Elden Ring versus Doom 2016.
Oh God. This is kind of fucked up. Doom
Uh,
2016.
what a heel. All right. Fuck
Yeah.
you, Miyazaki. All right. Here we keep going.
I'm sorry.
No, do not apologize. I love discourse. And again, you're not doing anything wrong by loving this game so much. Doom 2016 is a game that a few people who have been potential guests have brought up as a game they want to discuss. You are not alone in thinking it is a meaningful video game experience.
It is. And so,
It's just like very funny that it's been going up against what it's been going up against so far in this tournament. All right. What do you love about Elden Ring?
I consider Elden Ring like one of my top 3 games. It's up there with Tears of the Kingdom now and Breath of the Wild.
Right.
I got it at a funny time because I had COVID, so I
Right.
had to stay home, and I was like, okay, well, this is good. Gran Turismo is coming out, and Elden Ring. I just didn't expect it to be that big. I loved the exploration. I loved how every dungeon felt like a Dark Souls stage because again, like going from the Souls game to that, it's amazing. I love the art style as well.
No, it's incredible. I put over 130 hours into it. I haven't even done a second playthrough of it yet, but I loved that first playthrough so much. I'd stretch it out as long as I could. At least 8 of that was Millennia, but still. No, incredible game. I played that game right after playing today's game, Metroid Dread, and it's like, what a 1-2 punch. All right, we're in the semifinals here. This is our final 4. Mario Galaxy or Demon Souls?
uh, Demon Souls.
All right. I think Doom might be winning this, guys. Spoilers. I'm submitting. They're moving it up. Mario Galaxy got to the final 4, defeated by Demon Souls. I think, the reputation of Mario Galaxy speaks for itself, but what do you love about Mario Galaxy?
Fucking amazing soundtrack.
Yeah.
Amazing stages. Rosalina, fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but more specifically the soundtrack. The soundtrack is fucking phenomenal for a Wii game, especially.
My favorite moment in the newest, the Illumination Mario movie that came out last year was during the credits when you hear the leitmotif of the song from Mario Galaxy.
Oh yes,
in
the
there.
Gusty, whatever,
Yeah.
Garden Galaxy. Yeah,
Like, which is a very weird thing to say because it's the credits, the movie's been over, but Brian Tyler really knew what he was doing,
yeah.
interpolating that in there. So yeah, I agree with you. Phenomenal soundtrack overall. Everything from the observatory to the music that plays when you're reading the story about where Rosalina came
yes.
from. Yeah, all that stuff.
Oh my god.
Just a very tremendous score.
Especially, I can't remember what the galaxy is called, but it's called like Battle Rock Galaxy or something. It has a very, and then of course the Bowser fights. Bowser's like fucking crazy in this game, and I love it.
Yeah, a sweeping epic of a Mario video game. Like it's the closest that Mario ever gets in tone to like a Sonic game, because when they go into space or do whatever, and like the Death Egg in like Sonic Adventure 2. That's what that whole.
But yes.
But you know what I mean. Like it's
Yeah, I know what you
definitely
mean.
more tasteful in one than the other. However you want to say it. I love Sonic Adventure 2. I'm a defender, but
yeah, same.
I love her.
Yeah,
But like you know what I mean.
Well, before anybody gets on me.
We all love it. Everyone loves it. All right. Now here's a badass bracket over here. Armored Core or Doom 2016? Doom 2016.
Oh, shit. Doom 2016.
Bada bing, bada boom. There's no FromSoft game better than Doom. All right. Submitting, advancing. We're in the final 2. Speaking of FromSoft games, Demon Souls or Doom 2016. Ultimately, what your final 2 ended up being were 2 games about slaying demons, ripping and tearing them apart. What are you thinking?
Doom 2016.
All right. Bing, 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 bing. We are talking about a space marine later this episode. In here, we have a marine looking, a fucking covered up, helmeted, silent protagonist who goes to hell instead. When I was a kid, before I even like played Metroid, I just remember seeing like the box art for Doom where he's like on top of the pile of bodies and shooting at them and thinking that was very similar to Metroid. Just a stray thought. Just a stray thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Could not be completely different games, actually, gameplay wise.
Oh, yes. Very different.
Yeah, but love them both. Demon Souls got so far in this tournament, we never really got to give it a fair shake. It's clear that you love FromSoft games because they were in about half the games represented here.
Yes.
What speaks to you about Demon Souls?
It was my first Souls game. Of course, I'm mainly talking about the remake. But again, the original was my first Souls game. My first FromSoft. No, that's not true. Armored Core was my first FromSoft. Okay, so yeah, never mind. Demon Souls is like my first game in the Soulsborne kind of category.
Mhm.
And I just remember I loved it so much. It was so hard. I love games that are challenging. I love shitty accessibility. I'm kidding. But no, I do. I love Demon Souls.
Yeah.
I love it, love it. And Doom 2016 has an amazing soundtrack by Mick Gordon, by the way. That's why it wins.
Well, we'll talk about Doom 2016 in a minute, but it ripping tore its way through the competition. We were so eager to get to the end here, I forgot to ask you because you spoke about Armored Core broadly when putting it on the list. Obviously, Fires of Rubicon is a thing that most people who have played an Armored Core game have now played, but you
Mhm.
seem to be talking about the series holistically. When did you get into Armored Core?
There was this weird demo disc. I don't know where the fuck it came from, but it was
Mhm.
on my original PlayStation. I played a little bit of a demo of Armored Core on that, and that was my first experience with it. And I was like, I gotta get this game. It's like big robots. Again, I'm a child, but still, I like big robots. Didn't know it was gonna be that hard, but it was so good. That was my first experience with it. Was through a demo disc.
Yeah. Now that we're crowning the queen here, Doom 2016. This like I said, ripping towards its way through the competition. Incredible soundtrack by Mick Gordon, as you mentioned. The game that got me into the Doom series when I played it back in my junior year of college when it came out. Are you a fan of the Doom series? What appeals to you about Doom 2016 above everything else?
Doom for me has always been kind of like the Mortal Kombat of shooters. It's so bloody, and the music, and of course the demons and everything about it was just, oh, I need to play this. I wasn't a huge fan of Doom 3 because it was leaning more into horror, and I was like, nah. And then 2016 came out, and I was like, okay, this looks fucking cool. Like, for me, it's like the metal music, the industrial kind of rock, and just ripping and smashing everything, shooting. I forget what the term is. A Doom.
Doom clone?
The word, yeah, Doom clone. They just being able to move fast and stuff. It just brought back a lot of memories of like older games like that, like Quake and arena shooters, as I think the term is. So
Yeah.
Doom has like a special place in my heart for shooters.
Yeah, when the first person genre was still this burgeoning thing, people would generally refer to like the phenomenon of like first person shooters, especially fast paced ones, as Doom clones. Not unfairly in a lot of cases. And it's similar to like how people refer to sort of side scrolling exploration based or, level exploration games like Metroid or Castlevania Symphony of the Night as Metroidvanias. And I'm not a person that like gets into terminology about anything like that, but it is funny that like Doom eventually settles into first-person shooter games just broadly, and we're still trying to figure out a term for Metroidvania that doesn't annoy at least some contingent of person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Search action is the one that I've been hearing about lately from other podcasts, like the Besties and Into the Aether, that's how they refer to that genre of game in Japan. Search action games.
Oh, search action like, okay. I was thinking of roguelike for a second in my head.
Yeah. Games like the game Rogue, a game that no one has played in 40 years collectively.
I've never heard of that, and I just started hearing this term roguelike, and I'm like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I still haven't Googled it or, checked up on it, but I will eventually.
Yeah. For the record, I'm not dismissing the people out there who have played Rogue and enjoy Rogue. I'm just saying it's a game that more people have played games like Binding of Isaac or Hades or Spelunky, things like that, more than they have played the original game Rogue before its derivatives. So it's just kind of strange that we have kept using that term. But I'm also, again, language is weird. But hey, those are some of your favorite games. I'm sorry for making you talk about them in that horrible way, but I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
So that was Fast Bracket. If you enjoyed that, let me know. If you hated it, please let me know so I never subject another person to that again.
Hopefully people enjoyed that because that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's great because it makes talking about your favorite thing sweaty, and it also makes for interesting conversation when you stack up games that are so beloved against each other. We're talking about Metroid Dread today. What is your relationship with the Metroid series broadly? You talked about playing Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. I didn't play Metroid or Metroid 2: Return of Samus. Super Metroid was my first exposure to Metroid because I was a huge fan of Mega Man, so it kind of I really loved Samus's gun, her beam cannon. So I thought it was similar to that, but it was totally different. I really don't know how I beat that game when I was a kid, but it was just such a haunting kind of. People talk about this so much, it's getting kind of annoying, but like it sort of has like this horror vibe to it because you're by yourself. Samus is all alone, and to me, I love a lot of the sci-fi genre, and it really was the selling point for me was that it's a female character. I love games that are kind of like, oh, that's kind of crazy for its time. But yeah, the Metroid series has been artistically an inspiration for me. I used to love drawing Samus when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, then I went back and played the Game Boy one, and then I went back and played the NES one, which wasn't that exciting. But of course, Zero Mission came out, but which
Mm-hmm.
kind of quelled it. Uh, yeah, no, it's Metroid is special to me.
Yeah, no, it's a very special game series, and you hit a good point there about like talking about, people say it a lot, but it is a very salient point. It's a game like Doom where you are an anonymously faced masked person with a gun shooting their way through a situation, but whereas in Doom it's this like thrash metal power fantasy.
Yeah,
There's this methodical approach, this problem solving approach you have to take when you're exploring the game, and it's isolating and it's atmospheric. The way that the music is this more thumping, droning thing than this, big, loud thing. All these things contributing to an overall tone that makes for a completely eerie and immersive experience, which is why it has resonated with people. I definitely see the appeal. I remember when I had a Wii, I finally played Super Metroid for the first time, buying it off the Wii shop.
how was that?
It was great. I mean, like as a kid, I got stuck. I didn't finish it until a few years ago when I went back and played the series. But I loved what I had played until I got stuck. And now that between that and when the Switch came out and I finally did finish Super Metroid on Nintendo Switch Online, I had gotten a taste for that style of game through different things that took inspiration from Super Metroid. And going back to the OG was like, okay, I have a language and understanding of this now. Let's check it out. It's still phenomenal.
I was hoping that when you said you got stuck, it was going to be some kind of deep lore where you were the one who posted on Miiverse about being stuck.
Oh, yeah. Why can't Metroid crawl? Yeah. Deep lore there. It was the original Wii, not the Wii U. Even though I did have
the Wii U.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But why can't Metroid crawl? Metroid Fusion, another game I really love in this series. I was an early adopter of the Nintendo 3DS, so I got that game for free as an apology.
Metroid Fusion, amazing.
Yeah, amazing game. Whether it's 2D or 3D, I love Metroid. I remember wanting to check out Other M, and I still haven't to this day. And based on the reputation, don't think I will.
Yeah, don't. Just watch a couple videos on YouTube. That's good enough.
But other than that, great series. So, if we don't have anything else to get into, let's talk about the game that we ultimately settled on, 2021's Metroid Dread. Before we talk about the game itself, a little bit of background. Metroid Dread is a side-scrolling search action game published by Nintendo for the Nintendo Switch. This is the second Metroid game I've covered on the show so far, and it is currently the last game in Metroid's story chronology. Even though this is a relatively recent game that was released on the Switch, this game has about 2 decades of history behind it. The initial idea for the game was conceived by Yoshio Sakamoto, the series producer for Metroid, who served as a designer on the original game, went on to direct Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, and would also co-direct Metroid Zero Mission. Sakamoto wanted to create a traditional 2D Metroid experience while expanding on the stealth aspects introduced in 2002's Metroid Fusion. The Dread part of Metroid Dread comes from the idea of exploring what he described as fear-based gameplay, and having Dread follow Samus as she explores an unfamiliar planet. Sakamoto made 2 attempts on the idea of Metroid Dread on the Nintendo DS. Once in 2005 and again in 2008, showing a prototype to Nintendo of America and Nintendo Software Technology employees at E3 2009. Ultimately, though, Sakamoto did not feel that the technology of the DS was a good fit for his vision of an unsettling experience. Adding to the game's mysterious nature in the minds of fans was how information of the game was revealed to the public. In 2005, an internal software list of Nintendo DS games to announce listed Metroid Dread as a title. A February issue of Official Nintendo Magazine listed the game as having a release date of November 2006, and then the March issue just listed 2006 and advised gamers to wait for news at E3. No such news emerged, though, although Metroid Prime Hunters did release in March of 2006. Completely unrelated game, though. As other Metroid games released, speculation about Dread only got more intense, with Sakamoto denying that Team Ninja's Metroid Other M, released in 2010, and Mercury Steam's Metroid Samus Returns, released in 2017, were connected to Dread. Speaking of Mercury Steam, the Madrid-based developers' work on Metroid Samus Returns on a 3DS came about after pitching a remake of Metroid Fusion to Nintendo. Sakamoto, who wanted another 2D Metroid game, suggested a remake of Metroid 2 instead. Metroid 2 originally released on the Game Boy in 1991, and it was a game that Sakamoto did not originally work on, but he did feel it was necessary as it led to the events of Super Metroid. This remake, co-developed with Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development Group 7, would be the first time a 2D Metroid game would use 3D models. Sakamoto was so impressed with Samus Returns that he brought back both groups to work on today's game, Metroid Dread, which expands on some of the gameplay mechanics introduced in Samus Returns, including free aim, melee attacks, and parries, as well as introducing stealth elements that Sakamoto wanted in the series since Fusion. Prior to their work on the Metroid series, Mercury Steam developed the Castlevania Lords of Shadow games, meaning that their company can be considered a Metroidvania.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Anyway, let's talk about the plot of Metroid Dread really quickly. Metroid Dread is a direct sequel to Metroid Fusion, making it the last game in the Metroid chronology as of the time of this recording. The Galactic Federation acquires intelligence that the parasitic species X, which can mimic whatever creature it infects and was thought to be destroyed after the events of Metroid Fusion, survives on the planet ZDR. Initially, 7 extraplanetary multiform mobile identifiers, or EMI, robots, are sent to investigate, but the Federation loses contact with the machines, prompting them to send Samus Aran to ZDR as well. But the Federation loses contact with the machines, prompting them to send Samus to ZDR, since the Metroid DNA she was injected with makes her immune to the parasite X. Samus makes her way below the surface of the planet, where she encounters a Chozo, an anthropomorphic bird-like creature. Members of a Chozo tribe raised Samus after she was orphaned by space pirates, and this is her first encounter with a living Chozo since she became a bounty hunter. This Chozo is not peaceful, however, and quickly defeats Samus and causes her suit to lose most of the abilities she gained from her previous adventures. Her ship's computer, Adam, tells her that the encounter gave her a sort of physical amnesia and advises her to return to the surface, but she discovers that the missing EMI units have been reprogrammed to turn hostile and attack and pursue Samus on sight. In order to make her way back to the surface, Samus must reacquire her abilities in order to destroy the EMIs in her path. Shenanigans ensue. Some key figures who worked on this game include creative director Jose Luis Marquez Arroyo, game director Fumihiko Hayashi, art director Jorge Benedito Chicharo. Music and arrangement was done by Soshi Abe and Sayaka Doi. And Kenji Yamamoto, who composed multiple games in the Metroid series, serves as Metroid Dread's music director. And Minako Hamano, who was also a composer for the Metroid series, including co-composing with Kenji Yamamoto for Super Metroid, Metroid Zero Mission, and Metroid Prime 3, is the game's sound coordinator. unsung name and when people talk about the Metroid series and the people that worked on it. I go out of my way to shout out the names of people who work on the games we cover to emphasize that the art and media we enjoy does not materialize out of thin air. Projects like this require an incredible amount of work and labor. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that when this game was originally released, former employees at Mercury Steam spoke out for having their names excluded from the credits of the game. I don't know if you remember this, Alzandah. This was definitely a point of contention that did definitely sour people's perception of the game because of names being excluded for having worked on the game. Some of the people who spoke out remained anonymous. Two names that did speak out and put their name behind it were Roberto Mijas, who was a 3D character and environment artist, and Tanya Peniranda Hernandez, who was a 3D character animator. Roberto worked on the game for 8 months, and Tanya worked on the game for 11 months before leaving the company. Allegedly, Mercury Steam's internal policy was people had to work on at least 25% of the development cycle, which is a nebulous number because when does a video game development begin? It's a very strange policy. And Roberto also mentioned that his exclusion from the credits could also have partially been retaliation for not giving 42 days notice for leaving the company, a Mercury Steam policy, not a policy for the country of Spain, which requires a 15-day notice. Very strange internal policy overall over there.
Yep.
Look, we are a communal species dependent on the work of others, and to knowingly erase or diminish the work of someone else is a deeply cruel thing to do. Whether somebody works on a game for 25% of the time, or 3% of the time, or 1% of the time, if somebody puts time, effort, and labor into the creative process for a company, it is unfair to just exclude them from the narrative entirely. And it affects future employment. It is just a deeply unfair thing to do.
Period.
Look, you're an artist yourself. I know that, AI, for example, is a big no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Companies predate on the labor of others in so many different ways. And if we
Mhm.
do not call it out whenever it comes up, we continue to enable it. And even though I love this game and we are talking about it today, I wanted to lead with that.
Good on you for bringing up the whole thing about the credits. It's sad because that's gonna keep happening, and I think, as people who work on games, we should be more, verbal about when this does happen because it's messed up.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so we'll continue.
Yeah, of course. So, Metroid Dread was released on October 8th, 2021. Other games released in 2021 include Halo Infinite, Hitman 3, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Monster Hunter Rise, Psychonauts 2, Ratchet and
Oh!
Clank Rift Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, Resident Evil Village, Sable, Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, Unsighted, and Inscription, which I previously covered on the show with Moonshot's own Andrew Sherman. You made a noise, Alzandah. I'm assuming you quite love this list here.
Play Psychonauts 2, everyone.
I'm most of the way through Psychonauts 1. I'm having a great time with it.
Yeah, great game. A lot of great games on this list, actually. It's a good year.
A lot of good games here, big and small. Besides Psychonauts 2, what else do you like on this?
Well, Resident Evil Village, even though I'm mad that they killed Lady Dimitrescu and had her on every advertisement before the game came out.
Yeah, when I finally got around to it and figured, oh, she's only level 1.
Yeah, got to play around with her for a bit, and that was it.
Yeah, no. Resident Evil Village, Inscription, and Metroid Dread, those are 3 games that are constantly competing for what is my favorite game of 2021, actually.
Yeah.
Of course, Bowser's Fury, also incredible experience.
Fucking cool.
Yeah. But hey, we're talking about Metroid Dread today.
Oh, yeah, right.
Clearly a game that means a lot to you. So what made this one of the games that you would have wanted to talk about for the show?
Because I actually have a little history with it on my Twitter.
Oh, go for it.
Or X, I guess, if you guys want to call it that. It's the first thing I posted because I took a really long break from art. Used to do stuff on DeviantArt, horrible website for anybody who knows. If you know, the AI and all that crap.
Mm-hmm.
Metroid Dread was announced. First off, I was watching that Nintendo Direct, and I apologize because I do have a couple of friends who work at Team Ninja, so I'm going to say this lightly. When I first saw the footage of Metroid Dread at the start when she's walking, oh god, I hope this is not a Team Ninja thing. Because, Team Ninja developed Metroid Other M, for those who don't know.
hmm
And yeah.
And look,
But
not
no,
everything Team Ninja does is bad. We love Ninja
no, yeah,
Gaiden,
we
don't we,
love Team
folks?
Ninja. Yeah, Ninja Gaiden's really good, except the
Yeah.
third one. Um, so when it showed the title, like before Dread popped up, aside from when Metroid Prime Remastered Shadow dropped, that was probably the first time I let out anything verbally watching a Nintendo Direct. I don't usually do that, but when I saw the Dread title appear, I was like, "Holy shit, I have to draw something of this." And I posted that art piece of a lot of people like it. I personally don't, but I just wanted to draw Samus again, and that's what got me most of my followers and what got me noticed. So Metroid Dread, aside from that, has like a special place in my heart, and like I've been waiting for news for that for a long time. Like there was a big Metroid drought. Wink, wink. Um, so just to see Metroid again was just amazing.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a big moment, especially, referring to the aforementioned, like, long-awaited nature of Metroid Dread. This is a game that people had been hearing about for years, and then it became nebulous as to whether it was ever going to come out. It was a game that was internally abandoned for a while, and then boom, here it is with name and all. It came out only a few months later too, which yeah, no, it's great. It was the game that motivated me to finish Super Metroid because I definitely wanted to check this game out. It looked really cool, and knowing through osmosis like the significance of it being called Dread, I wanted to definitely be a part of that conversation, and I got it as a Christmas gift from previous guest of the show and my roommate and the person who designed the art for the show, Avery.
Oh, so was this your first Metroid game?
Super Metroid was my first Metroid
Okay,
game.
gotcha.
Yeah, no, I would say this is like the second I finished.
Nice.
Oh, no, I finished Fusion too.
Okay, that's a good one to finish.
Yeah. So I did
Amazing game.
Super, and I did Fusion, and then I did Dread.
Nice.
Yeah. You talked about your first encounter with this game, when you saw it on the Direct. Did you get it day and date? When did you finally get around to playing it?
Right, of course. I got the collector's edition and I got a digital version. Okay, before anybody okay, I got 3 different versions of it. That's how excited I was because I'm like, Nintendo fans are the worst, or just fans in general of video games. They'll cry for these series, like, "Oh, I want a new F-Zero, I want a new Star Fox," but when launch date comes around, they're not buying it. And they know they're sharing illegal links of ROMs the week before. So, of course, like, I wanna add some money to that and bought it for my cousin as well, like, and just anybody I could think of. Um,
Right.
Mass support.
Yeah, I want to make sure that as many people get to play this game as possible, and that paid
So
off
we
as
could
we'll
get
talk
more
about.
Metroid games.
Yeah. Side conversation here. Are you aware of the toy company Figma?
Yes.
Yeah, did you pre-order the Dread figure?
Yes.
All right. It is also coming to our house when it is delivered.
Nice.
Yeah. Avery is the toy guy in like our duo, and he made me aware of it, and I was like, "Well, we're getting that, right?" And he said, "Yes, we're getting that. We're getting that for our house immediately." Yeah. But yeah, no. Wonderful game, and
Mhm.
I'm very excited to talk to you about it, especially as it's been a significant part of your artistic journey. But before we get too deep into that conversation, I always make time in every episode to talk about the availability of video games in a segment I call No Country for Old Games. So, before we talk more about Metroid Dread, we have to talk about how readily available this game is to those who are interested in playing it can check it out. Video game preservation is one of the causes within video games that mean the most to me because I believe video games are an art form. Artists work on them, artists are fucked over by them, and there is nothing that makes it more of an art form, unfortunately, than people getting screwed over. Video games will break your heart, kid. People who work on these games create experiences that leave some kind of impact on the people who play them on the consumer end. Unfortunately, this means very little to publishers who have historically struggled with keeping older games available on modern hardware. And as time goes on, games that were once readily available to purchase and play become more and more difficult to acquire. Hence this segment, where we will rate today's game on a scale of A to ARG. And ARG is obviously an expression of frustration in how hard it is to acquire a game and is in no way me covertly advocating for piracy, which is illegal. Don't be a pirate. Samus kills pirates. What? No pirates in this game. Why? Samus killed them all. Fuck.
Yep.
But there isn't much to say about the availability of Metroid Dread specifically, because it is the second most recently released game I've covered on the show among all the games I've covered. Inscription being the most recent. In fact, both of these games were released less than 2 weeks apart. Dread on Switch on October 8th, Inscription on PC October 19th, just 11 days later. But this being such a recently released game means that it is readily available to purchase both digitally and physically. And while it is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch, we don't mark down for that, just the nature of the video game industry. So I think it is safe for me to give this game a rare A for available. But of course,
not at my Best Buy.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, Best Buy is struggling with a lot of physical media, isn't it?
Yes.
No longer are there any Blu-rays. And maybe it's possible you just bought all the Metroid Dread copies in your area based on what you're telling me. Yeah, I do imagine that like physical production is probably winding down now that the game is approaching 3 years old. It is a game you can purchase digitally. We will keep an eye on the physical presence of this game. And that's why we can't get comfortable with these conversations, because circumstances change and the industry is always hanging on by a thread. Preservation is a constant effort, and a game this great should always be readily available to pick up and play.
Agreed.
But what about Samus's other adventures? Now, I talked about Metroid Prime's availability over a year ago, so I won't touch on that one again. The remastered version of Prime can be purchased physically or digitally on the Switch as of the time of this recording, since I covered this game in February 2023. So let's talk about Samus's 2D adventures. Those who pay for the Nintendo Switch Online subscription service have access to select games from the NES, SNES, and Game Boy Color libraries. This means you can play the original Metroid released on NES, its Game Boy sequel, Metroid 2 Return of Samus, and Super Metroid. This plan costs $20 a year for individuals or $35 a year for the family plan for up to 8 people. And those who pay for the higher tier, the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack, dumb name, have access to select games on the Nintendo 64, Sega Genesis, and Game Boy Advance. Metroid Fusion, the game directly preceding Metroid Dread chronologically in the timeline, can be played on the Game Boy Advance application in the expansion pack service. This plan costs $50 a year for individuals or $80 for the family plan. So that means all but 2 of the 2D Metroid games are available to play via emulator on the Switch. As long as you continue to have the subscription. If your subscription lapses, you can no longer play these games. You cannot own these games. It is functionally a rental model. But the 2 Metroid games we will have to give an ARG rating to are Metroid Zero Mission, a Game Boy Advance remake of the NES Metroid game, and Metroid Samus Returns. You mentioned Metroid Zero Mission earlier as a game you love.
Yes, I want to play it again because I don't have it anymore.
As it happens for a lot of people, as hardware advances, older games often become sold or lost or misplaced.
Or stolen.
Or stolen. Yes. My younger brother had his Game Boy Advance stolen at school once.
Me too.
Oh, yeah?
My Indigo Game Boy Advance with Link to the Past in it was
Oh,
stolen.
no.
I never told my grandma because then I wouldn't have got another one. So
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm sorry about that.
yeah.
Metroid Zero Mission is more than likely to eventually appear on the Game Boy Advance Nintendo Switch Online service in the future, but it is a bummer that Samus Returns, a game released in 2017, developed by the same company that develops today's game, currently has no legal way to be purchased without resorting to the secondary market. It was exclusive to the 3DS, and that console has been officially discontinued by Nintendo.
Wah, wah, wah.
Did you play Samus Returns?
I've played every Metroid game, buddy.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Yes, I did. I could still play it, but I really feel like everybody should be able to play it. There's a lot of controversy about it. Like, there's people that don't like it, and there's people that like that other one that got pulled down. Can't really say too much about it. But
the other one.
yeah, the other one. I really think they should find some way that people can play this game again because it is really good to especially for story, there's pieces missing that people can't experience, sadly. And that is where a lot of Metroid Dread's blood comes from, is Samus Returns
Of
remake.
course. Yeah. And that is an unfortunate thing and a recent development in the grand scheme of things because these services closed down, ironically, around the time I recorded the last Metroid episode. So there's no way for people to even go onto the Nintendo eShop on the 3DS and purchase a digital version of Samus Returns.
Hmm.
Hopefully, the archivists and the cause of preservation will allow these games to appear in some form, once again, in a readily available manner. In summary, while you can play the original versions of all 2D Metroid games on the Switch, their remakes are currently unavailable as of the time of this recording. The galaxy will not be at peace until we live in a world that respects video games as an art form and preserves their games as such. And let's hope that Metroid Dread remains abundantly available because this game fucking rocks.
Period.
Yes, many people besides us two who are the most correct about Metroid games agree with us. Metroid Dread was both a massive critical and financial success. It is the fastest selling as well as the best selling game in the Metroid series. It currently holds an 88 out of 100 on the review aggregation website Metacritic. This is based on 116 positive critic reviews and 8 mixed reviews. It won Best Action/Adventure Game at the 2021 Game Awards and was Time Magazine's Game of the Year. But we are not here to reduce the legacy of Metroid Dread to a series of numbers and sales figures and accolades. We're here to discuss what this game means to somebody who played it. So let's get into that, Alzandah.
Journey to distant realms. Explore the furthest reaches of the universe. Survive deadly dangers. Experience matters of the heart and more in a new actual play podcast. Join me, Audrey. That's right, just me, as I play tabletop games designed for one player. From journaling games to tarot games to even games that take me outside, I'm bringing you along for the ride. Join me for every episode of Alone at the Table.
What do you like about this game that you wish more video games would do?
That is a really good question. Um, I'm always about style. I think there's a lot of games out there that do what Metroid Dread does, but I would say in Nintendo's little world, it is the most stylish game to come out of Nintendo. It's the coolest, I would say. From the boss fights to the cinematics. I've never seen anything like this in a Nintendo game. What I would like for more games to do is probably the things people complain about. Like there was that guy, I don't know his name, I can't remember. He made some video about how you can't see where you shoot the little hole to get through or whatever, and it was like very infamous on Twitter. And I just found it so funny because I was like, okay, I used to struggle like this when I was a kid, and I figured it out. But
You mean
this
video
grown
game
man-
designer David Jaffe, who
Oh,
worked
yeah.
on a Twisted Metal series and the original God of War video game? That guy?
Oh, that's who. Oh, he developed Twisted Metal.
Yeah.
He worked on Twisted Metal. Okay.
Yeah, he was the game designer for the original Twisted Metal, and then Twisted Metal 2 and Twisted Metal Black, and then went on to work for as the game director and lead designer of the original God of War, and then creative director God of War 2, and then fell the fuck off hard in terms of putting out anything again. Well, he also worked on Twisted Metal 2012. I don't know how people feel about that one, but Drawn to Death was a piece of shit, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a unpleasant public figure, and one who also at one point was shitting on Tears of the Kingdom and generated AI artwork to
What?
be. Yeah, he was like, this game could be so much better if it was on better hardware, and then like shows an AI image of like what
Oh my
Tears of the Kingdom
god!
would
I
look
did
like.
not know that.
Yeah. This is a guy who I would like, tiptoe around kind of being like, oh, like he did a lot of good stuff, but like, unfortunately, he has an unpleasant online. No, he did AI fucking bullshit.
Oh, what a bitch! I like.
Yeah.
Even looking at that video, what I was talking about, like more games should do. I was like, as if this grown ass man is like struggling to find this little whatever. I think just any game like this, you're gonna be shooting everywhere, and then eventually you find a way through. I'm not one for hand-holding in video games, and I think that's what I would love as an option in most games, because I think we should at least have an option for, people who do love accessibility or need accessibility, but have an option where you don't get handheld through a game. Um, I That's what I love about Metroid Dread. It's unapologetically hard sometimes.
Yeah. It's a game where it's an interesting thing, right? Because I do not want to dismiss people's like criticisms of having a difficult time with a game that.
Except that guy.
Well, yes, the guy who's called Zelda Tears of the Kingdom bland and old looking, and then got an AI fucking bullshit machine to try and make the game look
Oh,
better.
Lord.
Like, oh no, intentionality versus fucking stolen art gobbledygook. Yeah, no, yeah, drawn to death, motherfucker. Fuck you. Taste, what is that? Whatever. If you have an issue with this game and you're not David Jaffe, I am empathetic to that.
Yeah.
But if you are David Jaffe and if you're listening to this, thank you for the listen. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, go fuck yourself. Politely.
Politely, fuck yourself. But no, like I'm empathetic to like the criticism of difficulty, but I do think that what this game is very good at doing is using visual cues and language to sort of guide you along in a way that it is doing its best to help you relative to, say, Super Metroid, which is kind of the way that Super Metroid's isolating is, lending itself to atmosphere. But say you're, a young 12-year-old playing a Super Nintendo game on the Wii, you get stuck and you don't get to revisit the game until you're 24.
Tough shit.
Yeah, like
I'm
me.
kidding.
Yeah. But it's a game that gives you a lot of visual cues. And again, you're always welcome to look up a guide if you get stuck. But I do think that this is a game that is conscious of the challenges of designing a game like this, and also is very forgiving and silently guiding you along in a way that feels empowering for the player without being pulled along. Because I know people's criticisms of, say, Metroid Fusion was how kind of overly communicative it was about going to the next objective. But I do think this game finds a balance between the Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion way of guiding the player along.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, what else do you like about the game?
Actually, I would say back on that, the Tales of Warriors, like that should have me sweating. So yeah, while it is one of the easier accessible Metroid games, except that shit that was fucked up.
Yeah.
Had me sweating.
Yes, no, there was definitely parts that made me get that were hard as shit.
Yeah.
I loved how hard it was. I hate how hard it was. Yeah, no. What else do you like about the video game?
And then there was the people. Sorry. And then there was the people that would upload those fucking YouTube videos where they're like, "Oh, you could skip this," and I'm like, "Yeah, like how am I gonna know that? I know about skipping in other Metroid games, but like I'm just totally enveloped in this right now." So it was kind of like, "Oh shit." What else do I love about the game? Is that what the question was?
Yeah, I mean, what else do you love about the game? Yeah.
Again, back to its style. Its cinematics are again, it's developed by Mercury Steam, right? So they have a different of course they're gonna do different things with the game. I totally trust it's like when Retro first got a hold of Metroid, they did a lot of things differently than you would expect Nintendo to do with Metroid. I feel that Nintendo maybe doesn't know what to do with Metroid or Star Fox or F-Zero. They seem to be better off being developed by someone else.
Team Ninja accepting.
Except Team Ninja, sorry. But yeah, the style of this game is so cool. Like especially that boss fight, the final boss at the end. I did post this clip that I really love when you get to the second phase and when he first sprouts his wings after Samus body checks him with her arm cannon. Yeah, I never thought I would see something like that in a game with a Nintendo character that would just look that cool. Yeah, so its style is then music. It's where I would love to see another 2D Metroid go. Definitely something I really loved about the game was its style and the new things it introduced, like where there's no space pirates in this game.
Yeah, what I love about the Metroid series is how uniquely positioned it is in Nintendo's oeuvre, right? Mario's universal. Everybody in the world possibly knows who Mario is.
Mickey Mouse, kind of.
Mario, Pikachu, who are the more recognizable public figures in the video game world. And then The Legend of Zelda is now this deeply popular thing, this very influential action-adventure series. And it's malleable. It can do something dark like Twilight Princess. It can do something vibrant like Wind Waker. And it can split the difference with something like Breath of the Wild that evokes Princess Mononoke era Studio Ghibli. Metroid is a series that has always kind of skewed dark because of how immersive and atmospheric those early games were. As we've talked about earlier, the isolation of being Samus, the fact that she is a bounty hunter, her methodology is, destruction. You're not necessarily searching to save an individual, you are stopping a threat. The Metroids are this, man-made horror, or designed horror that is inflicting danger and pain, and you are stopping it. And even though these aren't narratively driven games in like a traditional sense, where like in an Uncharted game that's very narrative driven, there is a story and a through line through all of this. And the trickles of story that you do get all kind of contribute to this overall feeling of darkness. It's very interesting that this is published by Nintendo and it is a first party Nintendo game, and Samus gets to hang out and play Super Smash Brothers with everybody when it is so stylistically, tonally, and visually different from most of Nintendo's other games. I love that, especially this game that's so cumulative in addressing all the things that Samus has done and has happened to Samus. It's great.
I don't know if you've seen the Japanese ad for this game.
I haven't.
Yeah, it has like this heavy metal kind of rock music playing in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so weird seeing that from Nintendo as well. Like,
yeah,
the marketing for it is just so out there. It's funny that you should also mention, I know we're talking about Metroid Dread, but when you mentioned about Samus being a bounty hunter, I was like reading some shit about how Nintendo told Retro that, oh, she's not a bounty hunter, because they wanted to introduce bounty hunting in Metroid Prime 3. And they're like, oh, she's not a bounty hunter. That name just sounded cool back in the day.
Well, I mean, she took a job to kill things. I would say that suits the bill.
Kind of like a merc.
Yeah, we can talk about the legal terminal. What is she? Is she a PMC? Yeah, no, but like her thing is explicitly, causing harm. She has a gun for an arm. You can't really twist that into being like self-defense. And she has a tragic backstory where she not only loses her, original family, but the Chozo that raised her have functionally disappeared from public society.
Oh
So
God.
that isolation is not only interactive in being on these lonely worlds, but it is true to Samus as a character. That's why, for the most part, she is a character that has traditionally been silent or close to silent, because who does she have to talk to or to interact with?
Mhm.
It's a uniquely great series, and that's why it's like sort of attached itself to the minds of the Nintendo fans who play it, because Nintendo's not making, one, a lot of Metroid games, but two, games of this specific type. We talked about the space pirates, right? Why aren't there space pirates in Metroid Dread? Because Samus got them.
Yeah, she
Over the
fucked
course of the
shit up.
series, she took care of it.
That's why a lot of people always play with the idea of her fighting like the Predator or something. I'm like, she'd probably hold her own.
Like, it is a series that has like a more quiet and immersive and atmospheric tone than Doom, but like in a lot of ways, she is like the Doom Slayer.
Yeah.
And like the heavy metal music in the commercial, especially in this game where you're doing some insane locomotion.
Well, it goes into style as well. Like when she defeats a boss and she does it so coldly, and especially that first boss. Can't remember what it's called.
I know
Where
what
you
you're
get
talking about, though.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And she's like walking and she like, points her cannon at it. It's so cool. Like she's she knows what she's doing. Especially as being a silent protagonist until that one scene.
Mhm.
Which is also another point I love about this game. The cinematic quality compared to something like Other M where she was talking too much. Um Here, she's talking in a different language, and it just hits because it's not the first time we've heard her talk in a video game,
Yeah.
but it feels like it's the first time because it's such a serious game compared, like it's part of the Metroid timeline chronology, whatever. So hearing her speak in this game, like just that one little bit, I was like, whoa. I don't know why it hit me that hard, but it was like crazy. I feel like if Link were to say like 2 words in a game, it would evoke that same feeling.
Yeah, especially if like you are attached to Samus as a character and have been playing these games for years and years, hearing her speak in her native language, which is Chozo, because she was raised by them.
Yeah.
It's a double whammy.
It's so fucking cool. I recommend people just rewatch that scene on YouTube. It's so good.
It's great.
Kino ulu turuta. Ana maril sanur pura. Ay marhel kalom.
Yeah, no, this is you talk about cinematic, but and you're not wrong for saying that. It's an interesting thing, right? Because in our traditional understanding of cinematic, Other M would fit that bill in terms of like this is voice acted cutscenes, story driven narrative, and the gameplay is in service of like, going from this sequence to this sequence in the narrative. The way Metroid Dread works is it is like 99% of the time you are playing the game, controller in hand, hitting things, shooting things. It's gameplay. Like the longest period of time where you are not shooting something is when you are having a lore dump where Samus does say that line where like that information is being relayed to you, and then it's back to the rest of the game. It's not cinematic in like the heavy camera angles and constant cutscenes so much as it's just like a really good way of telling the story where you are using the traditional style of Metroid gameplay in a way that this story feels personal to Samus as a character. The fact that this is the culmination of all of the previous video games converging into this one point. The fact that the final villain of this game is a Chozo, where you have never encountered a living Chozo in the series up to this point. The fact that you are imbued with like parasite DNA from Metroid Fusion. So not only does Samus have human DNA and the injected Chozo DNA that she had received as a kid, but now she has alien DNA. She is literally carrying every experience she's ever had with her in previous games with her in her body, physiologically. I think that's very powerful stuff. And like this game is a great intro game in the sense that it is, if this is your first time playing a Metroid game, you're still going to have a blast. But if you have been playing Metroid games since the NES or the Game Boy or the Super Nintendo or the GameCube, you're going to get a lot out of this narratively.
Yeah, and I would even say I love environmental storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a lot of that in this game. Plus, with cinematic, what you were talking about, where you'll see something. This is kind of like new for Metroid, not for Samus Returns, but like for this game, everyone's able to experience. You get like creatures running in the background of the area you're in, or something will be destroyed, and like the environment's changing around you pretty much. Yeah, so seeing like stuff happening in the background like of the stage is that's what I consider as well cinematic. As you're going through the stage, it's really cool.
Absolutely. Like despite there only being one dimension, the two-dimensional plane that you're operating out of, it's not as exploration driven as say the retro series of games, the Prime series. It is still able to, with those backgrounds, give a sense of life to everything. It is like what the volume and rear projection and green screens have been trying to do with film for years, but it's able to do that in an artistically consistent way because it's a video game. It's all artifice, but it is beautiful artifice. It's consistent artifice, and the art direction of this game is so like artfully considered, right? Intentionality is a good word for it. Film grain in video games, I almost always turn that shit off.
Yeah.
Because it's not a movie, and unless you are very specifically doing things to imitate a movie, I do not see the purpose of it. Why does I don't know, like, but like especially as I'm playing like more PlayStation 5 games, like why
like Cyberpunk?
Yeah,
I think Cyberpunk has that shit on it too. I'm like, okay.
I try to turn off things like motion blur or film grain unless it's something that's deliberately in service of style. But I love how film grain is used in Metroid Dread because it's very specifically in those sequences where you enter an area where an Emmy is crawling around and the tone and atmosphere change. You are no longer Samus the hunter, you are being hunted. The dynamic is shifted, and it's using sound the very creepy sound of what the robots sound like overlapping with like the repetitive noise in the music. Everything's getting quiet. These rooms feel very still, and that film grain is on, and it changes everything, so it feels like a horror. Like that's why this game is called Metroid Dread. They wanted to instill a sense of dread and change the dynamic of what the Metroid series has been like up to this point. It's very alien. So yeah, like there's definitely use of cinematic language while still being a video game-ass video game.
Could you imagine a mode where the Emmy could hunt you throughout the entire?
Oh.
Or is that just me being evil? Like, that's one thing I would have wanted. But yeah, no, I totally forgot about the Emmy. Like that was a really cool way of upgrading, getting upgrades. Like, of
Mhm.
course, you get the upgrades. You get some upgrades from your typical boss enemies, and then you get some of the ones from the Emmy. And I really did enjoy those sequences. I did feel a sense of dread, especially in that last area.
Right.
It's a little much, but yeah.
No, like you talked about Alien Isolation is what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've been using the word isolation so much this episode. I was making sure I wasn't. But in Alien Isolation, like for most of the game, like you are dealing with that alien bullshit, right?
Yeah,
And this game isn't that because there's
wish it
huge.
was. I'm
I know
kidding.
you do, but like there are huge sections where you're not being hunted. It does the traditional Metroid, like I am tracking something down and I am trying to overcome all my obstacles. And then there are these specific sections where it is literally impossible for you to overcome the obstacle head on. This thing is invincible. If it catches you, you have maybe like a 3 frame window to counter what it hits you with before it kills you. It's humiliating. It's scary. It's very effectively scary, even if the design, like even if you think like initially like, oh, that's not a scary design, it gets you, and it fucking feels freaky. It's able to like sort of like put pockets of what Alien Isolation is doing in those specific things,
Mhm.
except instead of slowing down the gameplay, it almost speeds it up because it's not hide and seek so much as like sprinting. If like you can go invisible, but it only work for a few seconds. Your main way of like avoiding these things is to run.
I think like my main thing too with that, like especially those Emmy sequences, and I always think about that. Like if I was ever making a game, like what would make IGN whine in their review? What would make them complain and bitch? Oh, probably something like this. I'm pretty sure I didn't never read any reviews about this game, but I feel like that's like something IGN would complain about. I don't know, but yeah, I love those kind of moments.
Oh yeah, because video games are the thing that video games have like beaten into gamers throughout the years is the sense of power fantasy, right? I won't use IGN specifically as an example, but like gamers in general are any time that power fantasy is questioned, whether that is like being held like accountable for the people they've killed in Metal Gear Solid 3 or what have you, it is a humiliating emotional experience for them. And that's what this game is intentionally like putting into these Emmy sections is like you think you're good, you think you're hot shit. Here's something that literally cannot be beaten in traditional combat, and you have to like overcome it in a certain way. Like you are no longer the hunter, you're the hunted. Fuck you. And it's one of those things where it's like I understand why it took them like 20 years after Metroid Fusion to really like get this thing down because they
Yeah.
wanted to be able to like one effectively convey the dread and terror of dealing with that thing, but also do it in a way that is tough in the moment but super satisfying to overcome. I love the application of that, and it's a good balance of like doing it where it's not the whole game and you get a taste of what it's like to feel powerful, but you also have to deal with all that.
Yeah.
It's a very good application of terror in a game that is in a series that has built its community around speedrunning, because you think, oh, there's a horror section, so you mean the game's going to slow down? No, because you got to run, you got to sprint, you got to be fast, you got to have environmental awareness, and you'll be rewarded for that environmental awareness. And it's brilliant that this game is able to make conscious speedrunning decisions like that now that the speedrunning community is this mainstream, well-known thing and not this niche community of people just trying to see Samus's boobs if they beat the game in under an hour.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too that a lot of gamers do have a really especially Nintendo fans, they do have a really harsh critique after the game has been out for a while, or when it comes out. Because I do remember a lot of people complaining about the Emmy sequences. Oh, they're either too hard or they're just in the way pretty much. Which, like, I don't get that. But then there's that shift later on where they're like, oh, that was cool. You see that a lot with Zelda. Like they'll love or hate one game and then they'll move on. I think that's with any fandom really. When you asked the question earlier about what you would like to see other games do with like Metroid Dread does, I would love that feeling of, being grounded or humbled like in other games that are supposed to be horror. And I think there was one time in Resident Evil where I did feel like I was actually scared, and that
Mhm.
was the Resident Evil 2 remake.
With Mr. X, who's chasing you.
Yeah, and then even 7 too, because you're not playing this fucking character who can do a matrix move off a wall or some bullshit. But yeah, no, that's definitely what I would love more games to do is have that because like you said, a lot of people are like power driven or whatever. And then to have them get into this area where they're just you know what I mean? Like you don't know what to you basically have to like survive or whatever.
Yeah, because this isn't a survival series. It is making things not survive series.
Yeah.
It is a killing series, and that makes it interesting on a narrative level, right? Because I mean, people can criticize the Emmys thing, but it is part of the game's name, it being Metroid Dread, where Samus is now like at a crossroads, right? Where I have basically taken care of every threat up to this point. Metroid's dead, Pirate's dead, X dead, everything's gone. And then like this final threat, not final threat, because who knows where the series could go from here. I'm not going to call this like Metal Gear Solid 4 or anything like that. But like, this like new threat that is, now that we are like touching the, spoilers territory here, technically an old threat from Samus's past through Raven Beak, who is a Chozo, specifically the Chozo that did impart Chozo DNA into Samus, appearing again. And I know that's an endgame reveal, but it is an important part of Samus's journey of personhood, because who is Samus where like all these threats are gone? What does that at the end look like? You've been stripped of your powers. You have to climb your way back, and you're dealing with these impossible to defeat enemies. But you do defeat them, and you do get stronger along the way, and it's so satisfying each time you defeat them. And that's how this game is doing a really good job of like balancing the power fantasy with the bullshit, is because there's like a narrative thread of like empowerment and also constantly knocking Samus down in a way that is in service of where she is narratively in the story.
Especially in the end game. When you are fighting Ravenbeak, you do that I think that was probably one of the coolest moments. Like I always talk about that sequence, that boss fight specifically. Hot take, it's one of my favorite, I think it's my all-time favorite Metroid boss fight out of the series.
I can't really argue with that. I cannot think of a better actual like boss sequence. Like I love the bosses in the Metroid series when I think about them, but I do think in terms of emotion, in terms of threat, in terms of presentation, unquestionably the best.
My followers give me a lot of shit for that, but like this is the first time in a while in a video game where I've had to use everything I've learned. Samus uses all of her moves, all of her arsenal up against Ravenbeak, and it's so fucking cool.
Yeah, you're what's that bomb? What's that thing where the bomb takes up the whole room called again?
Oh, the power bomb?
Yeah, like you can use that to block that sun attack that he tries to put on you. Like,
didn't know that.
Everything that you have is in service. You can use everything in your arsenal against them. Everything.
Yeah. Seeing that on video like fucking sucked for me because I was like, oh geez, this could have been easier. But no, it was amazing. I haven't had a boss fight. Boss fights are kind of rare nowadays. Like you don't see them a lot in games.
Memorable ones for sure.
Yeah, memorable ones for sure. A lot of people do give this. I've seen this a lot on Twitter, where people will say, "Oh, but the whole reveal about her and Ravenbeak is so cheesy or whatever." I'm like, not really. Like, if you've played every game, up to this point, it's really. For me, it was a very big moment because like, oh, you do have Metroid DNA, you do have Chozo DNA, and like all this stuff. It's like, okay, that's That's pretty big.
Again, it's a game of convergence and a game of balance. It's past coming into the future, and it's a reckoning of what's been wrought and what's been caused. I mean, this evil Chozo is kind of like an inevitability in terms of like where can this series go. When this Chozo is like this like reverential presence, like we've known them as pacifists, we've known them as brilliant people who have completely altered the course of society, but here we have an evil one who like is using the technology and like everything to further a personal and evil goal with something like Samus, who was raised by a culture like that and is capable of so much violence. What does that look like, especially when the thing that imbued their DNA inside of you is this like evil presence? And I'm not saying like, oh, it's totally like, oh, is Samus going to become evil or anything like that? But it's an interesting conversation to have textually in the games where, yes, the Chozo were these pacifists, and I am using the powers granted to me by the Chozo to destroy things. But up to this point, you can rationalize that as her like stopping, evil threats like the space pirates that killed her parents, or the Metroids that present an existential threat to the galaxy, and the X parasites and so on. But all that stuff becomes a part of her, as we talked about with like the X parasite bonding itself to the suit and her having Metroid DNA.
She has like everything now.
She's literally equipped with everything.
Multi-diagnosed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a full circle moment too, because I remember thinking after Metroid Fusion, I was like, "What's the point of calling this game Metroid anymore?" I know that's sacrilege, but what's the point of calling this game Metroid anymore if there's no Metroid? And then it's like, oh well, she has Metroid DNA.
Why can't Metroid crawl is a valid question, because she is Metroid DNA.
Yeah. So yeah, now every game can be called Metroid because well, she is a Metroid.
Yeah. And I think that's beautiful, because I think like when people talk about like what are the emotional moments in this pretty cold, sterile world, and people think about the baby Metroid, because first of all, the implications of that, like this thing that has been an evil presence up to this point, a baby one is born and it considers you its mother, and it's this like good thing, right? And then also like in Super Metroid, it sacrifices itself to save you, and it's this big emotional moment. People like, even in like the 90s when you weren't able to like do, big sweeping cinematic stories, anything like that, it still hits because it's like, that's my baby. Obviously, Other M turns the dial to 11 way too hard in that like.
I was thinking about that. That's why I'm like, oh.
Because she's a woman and that mean mom and that daughter child thing. Like, no, you don't have to do. Empathy is a thing.
And all of a sudden she has breast cancer. Because I don't know, I've seen so many Samus models, and then for all of a sudden she has a little mole on her chin. I think that was a Team Ninja thing. I'm totally not sure, but did she have a mole in this game? Oh, she has it.
Yeah, she has a mole.
Oh, okay. I guess that's a thing now.
Sorry, continue with your our point here.
I forgot what we were saying.
We were talking about like the baby Metroid and like how Team Ninja went way too hard on the mother-daughter kind of.
Yeah, that was so fucking weird.
They gendered it too hard, but
yeah, seriously.
It is again a kind of thing where like that sacrifice is also literally a part of Samus Forever, as a form of not like trauma and like the brooding like, oh, script, oh, words, I gotta say every emotion that I'm feeling out loud, but just this kind of like, again, like it's literally in her DNA, that moment forever. And I think it finds a more, I don't know if positive is the right word for it, but like an interesting way of depicting that idea of carrying something with you forever in a way that also like affects you as the player interactively, because Metroid suits Samus is this badass moment.
Yeah.
Instead of like this moment of like brooding gender.
Well, that's the thing too. I always just saw it as her getting a puppy, the baby.
Sure.
To me, it was just her having a puppy. It is a really cute Metroid.
That's my dog that eats people. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it sucks the energy out of them.
He don't bite.
Which is why yeah. Yeah, and that brings me to the Metroid suit. Oh god. Okay, anyway, continue.
Yeah, what do you think about the Metroid suit as someone who's
I don't like it.
Like visually or like thematically?
Visually.
Okay.
I feel like it was too much. I it's such a weird design for me. I like the color scheme. It's just, I don't know. A lot of my followers want me to do art of it, and I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't look fun to draw.
So like How do you feel about like the gravity suit in Metroid games in general?
Ooh. Like how it looks?
What if it was purple? Up first, we have
Samus.
The what if it was purple of it all? Like, do you think that like it gets in the way of like box art, quote unquote, Samus, where like you have a perfectly good design and then like it just throws another layer onto it? I'm curious about you from like artistic standpoint.
I would say, well, the Metroid Fusion gravity suit is really cool looking. I think that's the first time I thought the gravity suit looked cool.
Mm. So so you admit you don't generally like it,
I don't generally like it now.
right?
That's why I was glad in Metroid Prime you get the phase-on suit. That's what it
Yeah.
was called. I can't remember.
I think especially in this game, like the purple feels like a little too. I like the Various suit and the power suit a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And never in my life have I ever thought I want a toy of gravity suit Samus. I understand like it's a way of communicating visually that there has been like a significant power upgrade for Samus, and I understand and appreciate that, and I understand and appreciate the idea behind consistently keeping that purple. And it is kind of like this thing where it's like you got to keep doing that. You have to do it again with the Metroid suit, and I feel mixed on the visual design of it.
The Metroid suit?
Yeah, the Metroid suit, the big lettuce lettuce suit Samus.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, it does look like lettuce. Oh God.
Lettuce / like Vilgax from Ben 10. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I see the vision. I just don't fuck with the implementation. Like I like the idea of the Metroid DNA and everything like that, but Cactus Samus isn't doing it for me.
It could have looked cooler to me. It just looks a little too overdone.
Yeah,
It looks very edgelordy.
Yeah.
Like, somebody from like Hot Topic wants it on a t-shirt kind of bullshit. I don't know. It's not I wouldn't have went with that design for a Metroid suit.
yeah, and it's a difficult thing to reconcile. Where like I think so much of this game's like visual design is so well implemented that it's weird that the last two suits feel excessive when they're again the balance of everything, having these like in-depth living 3D backgrounds while having a 2D space. The Emmys being these kind of under-designed robots that are able to communicate dread strictly through atmosphere. And then like at the very end we get this over-designed lettuce suit. I don't know.
It's crazy because I don't know. Have you seen much of Other M? Have you played it?
I've mainly seen like the cutscenes that people brood over.
I don't know. I would check out like the monster designs in that game because they're very like kind of boring, and that's another thing about this game. They have really good creature design.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
They went really hard with this. That's why, with things like granted you only wear it for like a little bit, and I hope if there is a sequel that if it is brought back that it looks a little cooler, because you have shit like the light suit in Metroid Prime Echoes, very cool design, and then of course like the power suit in this game. I wasn't a big fan of the fusion suit, and I think the suit in Metroid Dread, like the power suit, like that we're first introduced to, it's very half and half. Like for your Varia suit lovers and your fusion suit lovers, sort of a mix, a fusion, if you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of really good design in here, and I think I get lost in that part. I do understand what you're talking about with the purple,
Mm-hmm.
but I think overall design with her shoulder, I don't know what you'd call those.
Pads.
The proper term. Her shoulder pads look really cool. And then the little lightning light thing going down. Maybe if it was a different color, then it could appeal to whatever. But the design of it, I like.
Yeah.
Color, it's like, oh yeah, it's purple. It's a gravity suit.
Yeah. With that, right? I got who said like before you go out, always remove like one item from your outfit. Like if Samus was following that like philosophy, like the purple would be the thing I would take off. But I don't mind it. But like I do agree with you that like the Metroid suit as like is like kind of a little excessive.
Yeah.
While we're still talking in praise of the game and like talking about that level of restraint, it's amazing to me that the series being as old as it is, over 35 years old, so many other games have like the style of Metroid. Like you power up and get upgrades in Metroid, but there's no currency system in Metroid because she's isolated and all alone. Hollow Knight, perfect game, right? We love Hollow Knight. God bless Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
But, that's a game that has towns and people and a currency system. There's leveling up in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. There's like RPG mechanics in a lot of these games. The Souls series of games,
especially
definitely.
Castlevania.
Yeah, but this game is able, even to this day, the Metroid series doesn't really have to compromise on being you find more capacity for health and missiles, but you never change the build of who Samus is at any point. You're accumulating power, you're accumulating mass. You get the screw attack, and you're basically God forever. The Shine Spark ability is you are building power. Motion-wise, one of the best, most satisfying games in movement ever.
Yes.
And we'll get to that in a second. But my point of being it's amazing that the OG, other people have to add things like that to keep up with the OG, who's able to be well, we don't have to really change the formula too much as long as we have good level design and it feels fucking good to play. We don't need a second build. We don't need to do change lightsaber stances or introduce all these different types of classes that you can use in this environment. No, we can just fucking make it Samus fucking God eventually, and you'll love it every time. And I'm like, yes, please.
And she'll lose her powers at the start of the game.
Fine. Look, I don't expect to be using Shine Sparks and screw attacks at the beginning of a game, because where do you go from there? That's the best thing in the world.
I think Metroid Prime Corruption was the first, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was the first game where you actually start the game with you have your grappling beam and everything like that.
I couldn't correct you on that.
That's one I haven't played in a while.
Because I know that the thing with Corruption is that it really just shifts to action sequences, and it becomes more narrative driven, and that's a take. But I just really covet and value the way that this game is able to be an effective action game without that being the sole thing about it, because the environmental awareness, the accumulation of stuff is so valuable in these games. The way that this game is messing with you, and the power fantasy is just not giving you the morph ball until pretty late in the game. But it doesn't change the fact that you're still basically a very powerful person.
I would also like to say too that we've had of course what I said, a Metroid drought. Whereas all these other games, we're getting so many different versions of them, or we're getting these spiritual successors. I don't know if I've ever seen a Metroid spiritual successor, now that I think about it, unless there was one. Whenever I hear the word spiritual successor, I tend to avoid it because I want the actual thing. But these games are spaced so far between that it just feels good to come back, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that it's difficult for a series like Metroid to have a spiritual successor in a traditional sense, because when I hear that term personally, I'm usually thinking of a former developer who had a major role, has moved on to a different intellectual property. For example, The Outer Worlds is a spiritual successor to Fallout games, because a lot of the people who worked at Obsidian used to develop for the original Fallout games in New Vegas, right? Or some people who worked on System Shock went on to work on BioShock. But with Nintendo of Japan being a Japanese company who can't do layoffs in a traditional way because there's different laws about layoffs in Japan, obviously that doesn't mean there isn't any labor exploitation. I'm not flattening that, but there's incentive to hang on to your talent, so a lot of people don't end up moving on from that. And then when they do have people Retro or Mercury Steam work on their games, there's still supervision happening.
Yes, there's a consistency to the way things are run.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult for there to be a spiritual successor, but there can be games that are deeply influenced by it, whether that's Cave
Mighty
Story
Number
or
9.
whatever. Yeah. Mighty Number 9 is a great example of a something.
That was the game.
Mm-hmm. What was the name? The Castlevania guy who went on to make his own spin-off series. Not spin-off series, but
was it Blood Symphony or
Bloodstained?
Bloodstained. There
Yeah.
we go.
That's an example of a spiritual successor, but we don't have that with Metroid, really.
Yeah. I guess we won't need one.
We don't need... I'm happy with this.
Yeah.
This is thrilling. I know that we haven't gotten one of these in almost 2 decades, but man.
Well, it's nice because we have a split. You don't get a lot of games like that where you have oh, this is the 2D version of this, and we'll release this. Oh, this is the 3D version. Of course you have Mario that does that, but You never see like a God of War 2D to 3D kind of thing going on.
I'd say Nintendo in particular is able to remember their roots and also advance side by
Yeah.
side because we have Mario Odyssey and then Mario Wonder. You have top-down Zelda, you have 3D Zelda. You have 2D Metroid, you have 3D Metroid. Just with Metroid, like it's rare to ever get a game in that series, so it's kind of like if you have a
Yeah.
strong preference of one or the other, see you in 5 years. I don't know what to tell you.
Galactic Federation. Yikes.
But hey, we've sung our praises up and down. Besides the lettuce suit Samus, what criticisms, if any, do you have of Metroid Dread?
My criticisms are it feels like it's over too fast. I feel like I'm one of those people who likes a game to kind of be a good length. I don't know if Super Metroid was just like that for me, but that felt like a very meaty game. Whereas Metroid Dread kind of feels like I got like every power up so easily. Like I've died so many times, but like it was very quick, but it was still enjoyable. But I just wish it wasn't so. I wish there was more content in it. Than just like I do love seeing concept art and stuff like that, but I wish there was other things to unlock or even just like what's the word?
Secret boss, something?
Yeah, like a secret boss or something, like stuff like that. Some things to keep you exploring, because that's the whole thing about Metroid is like I like going back and really exploring, not just opening a new door that to get me somewhere else.
Mhm.
It would be cool to find like secret stuff.
So here's like a great thing about this game, right? Is like it's very newcomer friendly. And hold on, let me sing this praises for it in a really long-winded way. It's a very newcomer friendly game while also being very rewarding to veteran players. It messes with veteran players a little bit. It also like introduces new thing for veteran players, so it doesn't feel like it is just Super Metroid with a coat of paint on it. It is a new game with new mechanics and a new way of interacting with the world. And it also has to be accommodating of newcomers. Like for every like new thing, it also has to sort of balance that in some way. But it is still like consistent and also additive in a way that almost always works in favor of it. I mentioned earlier how this game is guided without being pulling your arm about it, like some Metroid games can be, or specifically Metroid Fusion can be in a way that I love Metroid Fusion, guys. But like it's things like hey, there's a teleporter over here. I know in previous Metroid games, this is around the time that you would now explore because you got a new power, but this teleporter is going to take you where you need to go to progress. And I think it's this kind of thing where like, I don't say the game doesn't want you to explore to some extent, but it has a better idea for you and how you want to explore. Because if you end up backtracking around the time you find a teleporter, you're kind of fucking yourself over.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I promise this is the better way. Get on to tell. No, hold on. I want to see what doors this bomb can open.
Yeah.
No, wait, please. Oh, God, he's gone. Or she's gone. And it's kind of like that kind of thing where, obviously, if you like listen to the gestures, but like if you're a newcomer who's fresh off of Super Metroid like me, and you're going right into Metroid Dread, and you're like, bye, and it's like, fuck, it's gone. They're gone. Fuck.
I would also like to say that Metroid Dread has another really cool death animation. That's one thing I loved about Super Metroid was the death animation. I found it so beautiful and kind of like, oh shit. This one also has a really cool death animation. One thing I would like to say too is and I'm noticing a lot newer games, modern games, and kind of sucks that Dread also has that. The idea of like a very, very, very hard mode being unlockable because Dread mode came out, I think like how many months after as a free update.
A while after, yeah.
Yeah, and I see that a lot in games too nowadays, where like, oh, you'll have the harder mode. You'll have to unlock it by beating it like Final Fantasy 16, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, Dread Mode was a post-release that came out 3 months after the initial launch.
Yeah, like February. I wish that was in the launch as an optional thing to do because I do love difficulty. I feel like that would have been really fun. It's just really like a lot of my grievances with the game are very minor.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it was longer. I wish there was more secrets in it, and
Yeah.
I wish the hardest mode was available at launch.
Yeah, I mean, I empathize with the criticisms, and I broadly agree with them. My thing is like you say you wish the game was longer, and you mentioned Super Metroid as an example of this, and I looked it up just to like verify before I made this point. Like if you look up on how long to beat, it says Super Metroid can be beat in 7.5 hours, and Dread you can beat in about 9 if you take the critical path, whatever. There's differences, but what that says to me, and you can correct me because I can't speak to your personal perspective, but pacing, right? Have you ever watched a 90-minute movie that felt like 5 hours and then watched a 3-hour movie that felt like maybe 90 minutes at most?
Barbie.
We don't have to say, yeah, but like, like there's a specific pacing with Super Metroid where it feels like you're trudging along in a good way. Like it feels a lot more incremental. And since there's so many new things in Metroid Dread, they're giving you a lot pretty quickly. And that makes it feel like the game's going by faster.
Yeah.
So I definitely like see why it feels like Super Metroid is technically the longer game because of the pacing and how it's distributing things to you versus the way that Dread is kind of like always like slice of cheese at your head. Hey, here's a new
Yeah.
thing. Bam, 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 bam. Y'all have ADHD now, right? Bam, 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 bam. And I love both methods of it. I love how quickly you accumulate the power in Metroid Dread, but it does make it feel like the game is going by a lot more quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's what I mean. It feels that way.
Mhm.
Whereas Super Metroid, the 4 times I've played it, it feels like it's been getting longer and longer.
Yeah.
Well, compared to when I first played it as a kid, like I said, I don't know how I beat that game as a kid. I felt like it wasn't as fast as it wasn't as long as like my previous playthrough.
Oh yeah. And that's the other thing. Like these games are conducive to speed running in a way that they're meant to like not be 20-hour experiences because they want you to replay the game and get a better
Yeah.
time. And especially this one that's more consciously built for the burgeoning speedrunning community in the internet age with games done quick and all that, right? They're doing it a lot more consciously than previous games that were made. What Metroid Fusion was like Game Boy Advance era, way before even YouTube. And then this game comes out and it's definitely being a very fast-paced game. It's interesting how the internet has informed and also like sort of held the game's feet to the fire in terms of like making a game that's speedrunner friendly. And it's like the same way that like it would be weird for a Resident Evil game to be too long because you have to replay the game to get more and more weird features like infinite rocket launcher and stuff, and you want to keep beating that time. Talking about like the pace of everything that goes into like maybe my favorite thing about this game, which I alluded to earlier in terms of like movement being the best in possibly any video game ever.
Yeah. It's good for the speedrunning community, especially like I'm not a speedrunner.
Mhm.
Unless I'm playing a Resident Evil game, then I like to try and see how fast I can beat the game. That's the one game probably where I'm a speedrunner. Yeah, the movement in the game, very built for the speedrunning community, I noticed, like, it's more friendly to them. Yeah, especially, like, when we're talking about the Shine Spark,
Mhm.
which is so fucking cool in this game.
Most of the uses of the Shine Spark are purely optional puzzles that are sort of testing your expertise on it. There's a conversation to be like, are the rewards worth the effort that you go through? And the answer is, I mean, not really at the point where you're doing all that, but also like it fucking rocks. And so it's so satisfying when I do solve a puzzle that like, yeah, sure, I'll take anything. The journey, not the destination.
There was that one where you had to Shine Spark across 2 rooms and then go up or down, I think. It's,
Hmm.
like, in the last area, then I really was I felt accomplished after that. It was really satisfying.
Tremendously so, especially with the quality of life sort of like if Super Metroid, one of the best games of all time, right? It is a platforming game. It's using platforming mechanics, but it is very precise. It's a very precise game. When you are taught how to do the wall climbing thing, right? It's you kind of have to get that kind of close to frame perfect if you want to execute a good wall jump. Whereas like wall jumping is just kind of like built into Samus's DNA at this point in Metroid Dread. So like even before you have any like special, you're bouncing off walls. Yippee! Look at me go. How that extends to, like shine sparking and everything like that is you're able to roll and slide while still maintaining and jump around while maintaining that momentum, as opposed to Super Metroid, where you have to just keep maintaining the running pace for
Mhm.
the speed to be a factor. And I love that. I love one because it makes the game feel so much more modern. It is a meaningful upgrade from one of the best games ever made. but also like the way that you're able to incorporate that. Like if you are in a boss room, that means that you can build up the momentum to do a shine spark and put the momentum of that attack on a boss to just completely nullify a phase of a battle if you want to.
Yeah.
If you master this, you are actually beating the game more quickly, which is leading to the speed running. Back to the speed running thing. God, what an awesome game.
Yeah.
When I talk about like what are your favorite like games where you're like in terms of like control, and I think of like Max Payne 3, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Metroid Dread.
There's a game I've never played.
Max Payne 3?
Yeah.
Max Payne 3 is really, really good. People
Ugh.
were frustrated because the tone and vibes and everything, it moves away from the tone of the first two games. And there's certainly a conversation to be had of that, but I think it is unimpeachable in terms of game feel.
Yeah, definitely something I have to check out for sure. I've been meaning to check that one out.
It's on Steam.
Anyway, back to Metro. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Back to Metroid.
Back to Metroid. Incredible game. What impact would you say? You've talked about it at the beginning, talking about how it basically built your online presence and exposed you to, motivated you to get into art again. But what other impacts would you say this game made on you?
It's made me want, more out of Metroid as a series. And I've always been like, okay, like this Metroid's good, this Metroid's good, this Metroid's good. But this one, it's like, okay, now the next one has to be really good. And
Mm-hmm.
I could see. I hope they keep Mercury's Steam around a little longer. I've seen people talking about how they would love to see a Super Metroid remake by Mercury Steam. The thought is like, okay, that's kind of scary because Super Metroid is such a great game, but I would love people to experience it with a fresh coat of paint. For people who aren't really into 2D, like if they're not into like older games or even Metroid Fusion, I would love to see Mercury Steam do something with that. But yeah, moving forward, I would love to see them do more Metroid games, and Metroid Dread has really instilled that, that they have to really up the ante in the next one. That's the impact it's made on me, that I want to see more out of Metroid now. Like I expect style and substance to like continue to elevate.
Your standards have been raised.
Yes.
Yeah. Isn't that so rewarding? You got something that was not only so good that it changes you, but it also like it's one of those things where it's like, man, not only is it motivating me to do better, but it is also like making me want better out of the things that I enjoy, which is not an
Yeah.
unreasonable thing to feel.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like we talk about the human cost of everything, right? Obviously, all art is a struggle against limitation in some way, but we want to be considerate of the human cost of everything. But it is not an unfair thing to want better out of the stuff you like. And I'm talking as a Star Wars fan here, for example, who's used to things not always being good.
Let's not get into that.
We won't. We won't. God, I love Andor so much though. And what is
And I
Metroid?
and I love Ray Skywalker. Oop.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We don't have to talk about it. Look, if it raised the bar for you for Metroid, great. Because this is a game series that doesn't get a lot of entries. And you don't want everything to be Federation Force moving forward, for sure.
Yeah, pay artists more.
Pay artists more
Anyway.
too. Yes. I want better conditions and a more healthy industry, especially as we are coming to another precipice with not only the rise of AI, but also just
Ugh.
layoffs and
Layoffs, yeah.
things of that nature. I certainly hope that companies who are private equity firms that just like to hold on to the value of things don't get a hand on the companies that make things that we love.
Maybe Sonic Team could look at Metroid as an example of how to do 2D and 3D games separately.
It would be so funny to get a Metroid Prime style platformer for Sonic, a first person, like, whoa, what does that entry say?
Oh god.
Wow.
Yeah, because that's one series that has had me so divided. I think maybe that's the same for Metroid. There's the fans that love 2D, and there's the fans that love the 3D Metroid.
Mhm.
So I think it's easier for Nintendo and whoever's working on a Metroid game to pick that audience. Whereas with something like Sonic, you have, so many different kinds of Sonic fans. Like they love the comic books, they love the 2D games, they love the 3D games where you fight a Final Fantasy like boss at the end of the game for some reason. I think it's easier for Metroid, where it's in a good place where it's like, okay, we have this good 2D game, Metroid Dread. We have the 3D games. It's easy. We're easy to please right now, but we do we can't wait for what's next.
Yeah. I don't think we necessarily Metroid fans are easy to please so much as just they are fed good meals when they're fed.
Yeah, well, because we're hungry. We don't get enough.
It's like, oh, we only eat like one meal every half decade, but god
Yeah,
damn, is it a feast?
there was those 4 or 5 years where we were getting a lot of Metroid, so, we did eat.
Yeah. Your Sonic point brings up, and I say this as somebody who enjoys a lot of the Sonic games, but if you ask me, like, what is my favorite side scrolling game with a blue protagonist, I'm going to say Metroid Dread. My favorite game with a blue protagonist who runs really quickly. Yeah, Metroid Dread. God, yeah, what a great game.
Sonic Frontiers. Anyway.
To each their own. I haven't played Sonic Frontiers yet. I can't speak to it either way. A thing that this game influenced for me is looking at this game, right? I talked about it a little bit, but restraint and the value of it. Like, I'm not just saying that as a criticism of Lettuce Samus. Restraint in like the ways that this game is able to do that, like 99.9% of the time. It is beautiful backgrounds, 2D environment, simplicity with the complexity underneath. It does so much for the player on a simple level while also just doing so much in a literal background way, but like in a mechanical way to accommodate the fluidity and technical simplicity of a lot of stuff. And I talked about this earlier with how like so many other Metroid style derivatives have to do so much other stuff to keep up with the queen, right? But a game I played recently was Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is a game that does take a lot of level design influence and mechanical influence from the Metroid series. Literally, there is a sequence early in the game where you are following furry creatures to a wall, and then like they to show you like the wall jumping mechanic, and like as an option, they will jump onto the wall side to side like they do in that scene in Super Metroid. Like that is such an intentional homage to Super Metroid, and I love this game, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, a lot.
Before you continue with that, I just want to give a shout out to my friends who did work on that game.
Oh, okay, awesome. Look at you.
Respawn's awesome.
Yeah, but no, like that's like a very specific homage to Super Metroid, and I love Star Wars Jedi Survivor. It is like one of the platonic ideals of like what a sequel is to me. That's one of the games I played recently. And I played it I played it just now so I could get to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth without obstacle, and then I remembered Intermission, which I'm having a good time with, by the way. Point being, nice. I love that game. It's a game that does a lot. I think it's a game that's successful at a lot of what it does, and it's interesting, talking about like, it does leveling up. It has different stances for lightsabers. It has different modes. It has blaster, lightsaber. Its additive layers are good for its specific type of thing. But when I look at like what makes Metroid games so good, it's like it knows not to overwhelm. It knows exactly how much to put in something, and it makes for such a streamlined, smooth experience. Like Star Wars Jedi Survivor is a 20 to 30 hour experience. Its mechanics are in service of that. It's giving you a lot to play with. But man, the ingredients of Metroid Dread are so simple, but God, is it just refined. It's like it's pure. Yes. It's chemically pure. Metroid Dread is a chemically pure game. So yeah, that's what the game taught me the value of. The value of like having a 10-hour experience where just everything is just moving. Perfect.
And that was its impact on you.
Yeah, it's making me see game design in an interesting way.
Oh yeah, because you were talking about. I hate to take up more time.
No, please.
But you were talking about how like the complexity. There's a lot of it too. Like so to some people from the outside, it does look like a simplistic game because it doesn't have like all these extra mechanics that a lot of other games do have.
Sure.
But the complexity lies within like moving through a stage or an area of the game. Like, oh, do I have to use this weapon? Do I have to use this move a certain way?
Yeah. Precision.
Or even especially in combat. I've noticed the combat in this game is very like like very quick and fast, and it works so well, and it is kind of like a ballet of sorts where you're especially with a lot of the bosses, you're figuring out their moves, and I think that's where the complexity lies in the combat too as well.
Oh yeah, deceptively simple, I guess, is the way. Like it's doing a lot, but it is doing it in a way that is palatable. Like you're
A
using
lot of
every
good under the hood.
you're using every single button for Metroid Dread. And if I were to point out a flaw, I think that that's like one of the things. It's like I kind of get frustrated at the Nintendo design of like, God, this Switch control. I'm playing this game on. I played most of the game on the handheld version, and that's not the most like good for my fingers in a lot of ways. But
No. I'd actually recommend to anybody who's listening to this to play Metroid Dread and Metroid Fusion in the dark on a TV.
yeah, I was so addicted to the game. I was playing a lot of it in bed, and I was like, oh man, handheld mode kind of hurts physically.
Yeah.
And that's just like classic Nintendo not really being considerate of accessibility for people who have disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if I were to at the end here point out a random criticism of the game, but otherwise phenomenal game, and I'm so glad that I got to talk to you about it. It's a very cumulative game, and that makes it very interesting to talk about as like the second Metroid series I've ever talked about for the show. But it also lent itself to a rich discussion. I'm glad I could have it with you, Alzandah. Anything else you want to say about Metroid Dread before we move on to recommendations?
Yeah, go out and buy Metroid Dread if you haven't. It's really good.
Yeah.
And I want more Metroid games.
And if you can't find a copy of it, that's probably because Alzandah lives near you.
Yeah. Best Buy, don't go there.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons you shouldn't be going to Best Buy right now. Like,
Mhm.
if you want a Blu-ray, don't
Yep.
go there.
Yeah, don't get Starbucks either.
Yeah, don't go get Starbucks, don't get McDonald's, and don't go to Best Buy. In terms of the media that you consume, would you say that post Metroid Dread has that changed at all?
A lot of the media I consume post Metroid Dread.
Sure. Would you say that made an impact on like the stuff that you look for after playing it?
No.
Okay, just wanna ask.
I think well, because I'm always mixed with 2D games. Like I don't really play a lot of side scrollers. Last thing I played was Mario Wonder. Great game.
Great game.
For once, Nintendo finally did a little bit of a change to something style.
Mhm.
I would have to say, no, probably artistically, it did change a lot of things. Especially with like creature design and such, it made me want to like, try my hand out with creature design. I don't draw a lot of like monsters. Like I just recently started drawing Godzilla, so
Oh yeah,
like,
those illustrations are great. I love them.
thanks.
Yeah.
So especially like more alien stuff. It's changed that for me. Like I'd love to see, learn more about anatomy and such.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for talking about Metroid Dread with me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Before I let you go, sorry for holding you hostage. We before before you promote yourself, we usually set aside some time at the end for the guest to recommend some stuff based off of the thing we talked about. So, do you have any recommendations for people who enjoy Metroid Dread?
Well, like we talked about, one of these games you can't play right now, unless you could find a Game Boy. Sticking in the Metroid zone, like I would recommend playing a lot of other Metroid games. You have Metroid Prime Remastered that just came out last year. Definitely should pick that up. Yeah, I don't really have any recommendations. I would say watch a lot of the Alien movies if you haven't.
Yeah.
Check out Prometheus even. Alien what is it called?
Romulus?
Romulus comes out this year. Should definitely check that out. A lot of Alien is connected to Metroid in so many ways.
Oh yeah.
If you like face huggers, Ridley Scott even.
Yeah. And some recommendations that I have. What if instead of aliens, we talked about predators? Earlier I mentioned the prey-predator relationship that this game has, the push and pull of the experience with Samus, now being in a position of being hunted for the first time after being a hunter for so much of her career. The first Predator does a really good job at introducing you to a series of commandos who seem unbeatable from our human perception, and then are faced with a threat that is otherworldly and shows them what it's like. What basically puts them through like the world's most the most dangerous game. But a lot of people have seen Predator, right? But check out Prey, the 2022 film from Dan Trachtenberg. I know I mentioned 10 Cloverfield Lane a few episodes ago for the Portal 2 episode, and I'm mentioning another Dan Trachtenberg
good movie.
right? But Prey also phenomenal. Like Metroid, woman protagonist, facing down a threat, literally a predator, and overcoming that through ingenuity and persistence. So it's a film that was shot in English, also has a Comanche dub performed by its indigenous and First Nation cast. Wonderful.
That should have been released first, but anyway.
And it should have been released in theaters, but unfortunately,
Yeah.
Disney owns 20th Century Fox and bungled the release of
I
this
could have been
movie.
in that movie, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm indigenous, so there was a casting call that was going around. So Prey is an amazing film. Both films. Don't listen to what anybody on Twitter has to say about Prey concerning it having a woman protagonist. Predator and Prey are both very similar, where the movie starts off with like Kiefer was talking about how like all these commando guys, they have all these big weapons and shit, and then at the end the Predator's actually killed in very primitive methods.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same that happens in Prey as well.
Yeah.
Which go hand in hand with each other.
Look, the Predator fucking sucker punches a bear in Prey.
Yeah.
Anybody who...
Oh, not only that, it also has one of the coolest scenes that I would say, you should just check out Prey.
Yeah, no spoilers, but like...
Very bloody. Very cool.
People who shit on that movie need to get over themselves. Come on.
Yeah.
It's great. And
should have been in theaters.
Should have been in theaters. But yeah. So those are my initial two recommendations. Well, I would say it was mainly a recommendation leading into Prey specifically. And if you want to talk about aliens, predators, and dread, look no further, and hear me out, look no further than the 2013 film Under the Skin, directed by Jonathan Glazer and starring Scarlett Johansson.
Mm-hmm.
When talk about like dynamic switches between hunter and hunted, Scarlett Johansson's certainly a hunter, and she's also certainly coveted for being a ethereally beautiful woman in this film. And she is an alien, and she is isolated and disconnected as somebody who is an alien in Scotland. And the film goes into a lot of creative and strange places, and it puts a lot of tough emotions in you watching it, because it deals with a lot of heavy questions. Jonathan Glazer's films are great at doing that. His film last year, The Zone of Interest, certainly also put a lot of that inside of me. One of the most visceral and upsetting films ever. Under the Skin is also incredible, and I hope that more people see it in the wake of Jonathan Glazer's win, and of course his very brave statements at the Academy Awards.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So definitely check out Under the Skin. It is a very out there recommendation, but I assure you it connects to Metroid Dread in a very weird way.
And if you want to connect our two suggestions, you could watch Alien vs. Predator Whack Ram by the Brothers Strauss. No, I'm kidding. Don't watch that movie.
Okay. Yeah, watch the Predator movie Shane Black did, that piece of fucking shit movie.
Oh,
God, I hate that movie. What if autism was the cure to Predator? God. What a fucking... I love Shane Black movies generally, but what was up with that fucking movie? Moving on. Yeah, and if you are looking for video games, I'm going to just throw out a few recommendations for Switch games that are in that search action or Metroidvania style of game. Hollow Knight is a very amazing side-scrolling game of that style. If you haven't played it, just please check it out. Ori and the Blind Forest takes a lot of the design philosophy of that in terms of the Metroidvania style of game, and applies that kind of like less is more approach, to the extent that I think if you have been struggling to get into this genre and you're worried about these games being too hard, Ori and the Blind Forest is a great place to start. And I'm not saying that it's like a game for babies. I think it's an artistically realized and very visually beautiful game, and I think it has very strong level design. I just do think that, like, I know somebody personally who doesn't play a lot of video games, and she was obsessed with that game and was able to get through it despite not knowing a lot about video game level design. I think it's a game that could help people get into the genre. And
if you do want to introduce other games, you could get them to play Dead Cells.
Oh yes,
I'm kidding, but that's a good game. Don't show that to somebody who's new to video games.
If they're new to video games, it's a hard sell. But Dead Cells is fantastic. I'll always recommend Dead Cells. Hell yeah. Alzandah, it was wonderful to have you on the show. You're a wonderful guest. did not come across to me that this was the first time doing a podcast.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. You're wonderful. Before I finally let you go, please promote the hell out of yourself.
Yeah, I do concept art. I do art. You could follow me, Alzandah with 2 H's because somebody on Twitter has my username.
Mhm.
And yeah, free Palestine.
Free Palestine. Follow Alzandah. I will include the links to your socials in the description of this episode. Thank you so much again for your time. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Select and Start. Once again, I'm your host, editor, and promoter, Kiefer. If you enjoyed this episode, please give the show a positive review wherever you're listening to this. Engagement helps the show, and your feedback will improve it. And if you want to get more engaged, give the show a follow on Twitter at SelectPodStart. If you have thoughts about Metroid Dread or any other games we've discussed, send a DM or leave a comment, and I will gladly read it on the show. You can also support me on Patreon. If you pledge at least $1 a month, you will get early access to new episodes as well as extended episodes with exclusive content. That's on patreon.com/Kiefer's Corner. You can find a link to that and the rest of my projects in the description of this episode. Select and Start is on the Moonshot Network, which is supported by its own Patreon. Find out more on moonshotpods.com. The art for this show is made by my best friend, Avery Ott. You can follow him on social media with the handle at AveryRobinOtt. That's AVRY, Robin OTT. The show's theme song was composed by Mike Petrie. You can check out the links in the description for their work as well as Alzandah's. All right, I think that's it. The last podcast is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace. Hey, Funky Boy. Let's give it up for Funky Boy, everybody. Get out of here, buddy. All right.